Hey guys, tonight we're not setting sail into the rough, splinter-covered world of pirates. No sunburnt bandits, no suspiciously moldy treasure chests, and no unbathed sailors fighting over a stale biscuit. Nope. Tonight, we're traveling somewhere arguably more chaotic, more exhausting, and definitely smellier. The medieval world, where nobles lived in castles, feasted at long tables, and posed dramatically for tapestries, but only because thousands of invisible workers made their comfortable lives possible. But before we trudge through muddy villages, bustling kitchens, smoky great halls, and servants' quarters built out of pure suffering, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this strange corner of the internet. And leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. Somehow, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and for reasons science cannot explain, 2 a.m. is the perfect time to learn about medieval laundry, chamber pots, and why peasants were constantly one inconvenience away from collapsing. Now dim those lights, turn on a fan for that soft, white noise breeze. Get comfortable, maybe tuck your feet in, not because imaginary rats are coming for your toes, but because medieval Europe absolutely had real ones, and they were fearless. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what medieval life actually felt like behind the scenes? Not the noble version, the polished armor, the elegant banquets, the dramatic horseback entrances. I mean the real medieval world, the one powered by cooks who woke up before dawn, servants running up and down endless staircases, stable boys living in permanent mud, and laundry workers who suffered more than knights in battle. Who kept the fires burning? Who made the bread? Who emptied the chamber pots? Who mended the clothes, fed the animals, scrubbed the floors, sharpened the swords, and cleaned the castle after every feast where nobles spilled half their dinner? Tonight, we're gently pulling back the velvet curtain on medieval life to reveal the people history often forgets. The cooks, maids, farmers, millers, blacksmiths, wet nurses, stable hands, scribes, and servants who did the heavy lifting while nobles practiced looking poetic near windows. But don't worry, we're not diving into the misery headfirst. We're drifting through it slowly, sleepily, like a tired medieval villager trudging home after a 14-hour day. We'll explore the mildly tragic, mildly hilarious realities. Why everything smelled like smoke and livestock. Why washing your clothes was a nightmare. Why medieval plumbing was, let's call it, hopeful thinking. Why everyone needed at least 3 people just to get dressed. And why nobles owed their entire lifestyle to workers who never got thanked, paid well, or allowed to sit down. So settle in. Let your body relax. Let your mind drift back to a world of stone walls, flickering torches, muddy boots, and hard-working people who survived each day using pure determination and the strength of their 47 daily chores. Tonight, we honor the invisible labor that built the medieval world, from the kitchens to the stables to the fields, because without them, the noble life would have collapsed faster than a wooden chair under a well-fed king. Ready? Let's begin. Chapter 1. Pre-dawn among the servants. Long before the great hall awakens, long before the noble household stirs beneath embroidered covers and velvet curtains, a different world comes to life in the pre-dawn shadows of a drafty medieval annex. The air here is cold enough to sting the nose, pressing into bones with the heavy insistence of a winter morning. Darkness clings to the corners, thick and unmoving, as though reluctant to surrender to the coming day. Inside this dim and narrow chamber, a dozen weary servants lie shoulder to shoulder on rough, rush-stuffed mattresses scattered unevenly across the floor. Space is scarce, comfort even scarcer. The mattresses scratch faintly with every shift of weight, bits of dried rushes poking through the worn fabric, reminding each sleeper of the thin barrier between themselves and the hard, uneven boards beneath. The silence is not true silence. It hums with the soft, uneven breathing of exhausted bodies, the rustle of blankets shared between too many people, a coughing fit from someone who has worked too closely to the smoke-filled hearth, a faint groan from someone whose back has stiffened after days of hauling water, wood, and whatever else the manor demands. These sounds blend together, forming a chorus of fatigue that lingers in the musty air. That air itself carries a heavy mixture of scents, earthy, sour, familiar. Sweat that has soaked into linens after endless hours of labor, the smoky residue of last night's kitchen fires that crept into the annex through cracks in the wooden walls. Damp wool cloaks hung too close to sleeping bodies. It is not pleasant by modern standards, but for the servants, it is simply the scent of life. Evidence that they have worked, endured, and survived another day. A thin draft seeps through gaps in the timber, brushing over feet that have slipped free of shared blankets. Someone shifts under the covers, pulling the blanket back up, unintentionally tugging warmth away from another who shivers in response. Still, no one complains. In this cramped world, patience is a necessity, and small discomforts are simply woven into the rhythm of survival. The pre-dawn darkness holds a fragile stillness, but beneath it lies the weight of what is to come. These servants know the day will demand everything from them. They will rise before the noble family even opens its eyes, moving through their tasks with a practiced, weary grace, lighting hearths, hauling water, grinding grain, feeding animals, and preparing the manor for a day of comfort they themselves will never fully experience. For now, though, they remain in this temporary refuge of half-sleep, limbs tangled in worn blankets, backs pressed against cold walls or the warmth of another tired body. Someone murmurs in their sleep. Someone else shifts to relieve a cramp. The faint glow of dawn is still far away, hidden behind thick wooden shutters and winter clouds. In this moment, the annex is a world of its own, a place where the invisible machinery of medieval life rests briefly before turning again. These servants will never appear in illuminated manuscripts or noble chronicles. Their names rarely survive beyond a ledger or a forgotten household record. And yet, they are the ones who keep the manor breathing. Their sweat polishes the world that others enjoy. Their exhaustion sustains the comfort of those who seldom notice. As the pitch-dark room begins to soften, the first hint of gray creeping along the edges of the shutters, the servants begin to stir. A sigh here, a stretch there, a whispered attempt at gathering courage for the cold morning ahead. The day is calling them. Duty is calling them. But for one last fleeting moment, they remain in the stillness, sharing warmth, breath, and the simple knowledge that none of them face this life alone. And in this dim annex, before dawn breaks, the invisible labor that built medieval luxury rests, just long enough to rise again. Chapter 2. In the dimness of the stone-walled outbuilding, you blink blearily as your eyes adjust to the shadows. Welcome to your new abode, if you could even call it that. There's a boy, just like you, about to embark on yet another glorious day of back-breaking labor. His tunic is coarse and itchy, more like a punishment garment than clothing. Perhaps they designed it this way to ensure everyone remembers that life is, in fact, a struggle, not just a Saturday morning cartoon. You can smell the remaining hints of whatever last week's meal was, maybe a smorgasbord of fermented cabbage and the leftover soup that had the consistency of soupy rocks. Every morning in the medieval peasant life is a delightful surprise. Will you have the stomach for it? Spoiler alert, today's menu is likely to be unidentifiable. Enjoy! As the first rays of sun peek into this stone prison, home, you're hit with the powerful aroma of damp earth mixed with the sweetness of… Wait, is that the neighbor's goat again? Yes, it is. The thrilling sound of snorting and bleating will accompany you on your morning routine, because nothing says, "Let's seize the day," like an audience of critters that don't care about personal space. Now, let's talk about the mornings. In modern times, we typically start our day with a cup of coffee strong enough to wake the ancestors. In this medieval setup, coffee would be a luxury item available only in the fanciest castles, nestled safely behind their walls, like a unicorn separate from the everyday grind. Instead, your only morning beverage is a tepid concoction made from boiling water and what could only be generously labeled as herbs, lovingly foraged from your backyard. So, a delightful mix of the most questionable plants known to humanity it is, then. Heaving yourself up from your not-so-cozy straw bed, you step onto the floor, which is less of a floor and more of a patchwork quilt of dirt and whatever stinky debris managed to accumulate over the weeks. Oh, and watch out for the random pigeon feathers. They're like the confetti of poor decisions. Now, if you think waking up early for your morning meeting is harsh, consider this young boy's plight. He dons his tunic and immediately begins the daily ritual of mentally preparing for the back-breaking labor to come. The work? Oh, just a casual blend of tending the fields, hauling water, and praying that the villagers don't remember the annual turnip eating contest you lost. Before heading out, he awkwardly stretches, attempting to avoid the various creaks and pops from his joints, reminiscent of an old wooden cart fighting to turn a corner. Ever felt like your body was trying to stage a revolt against you, complete with a small parade of cracking bones? Imagine that, but with the added tension of knowing you need to survive the next 12 hours of field work with only turnip soup waiting for you at the end. The moment he steps outside, it hits him. The fresh morning air, laden with the scent of wet earth and something that is possibly too close to yesterday's dinner. You hear the distant sound of a rooster cawing, but you quickly dismiss that fool. He's living in the past, and you've got a future filled with mud and the odd, confused sheep. And as the sun fully rises, your roles of good fortune have been exchanged for a daily grind that would make even the most motivated modern-day office worker reconsider their life choices. It's a cycle. Work, return, eat unattractive mush, sleep, repeat until the universe decides you need a fun little twist like the plague. So while the boy throws himself into his day, we can sit back and chuckle, because in the end, whether you're hauling hay or slogging through work reports, managing life is just a little bit ridiculous. Sometimes you can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. And after all, only the toughest were lucky enough to see another sunrise. Who said there's no humor in labor? Yes, my friends, this is the comedy of toil, sprinkled with a dash of resilience, where one's existence is choreographed as a continuous dance to the tune of medieval absurdity. And isn't that mildly interesting? Chapter 3. The boy kneels before a cold hearth. Gently blowing on dead embers to coax them back to life, fine, gray ashes plume up, punishing his young lungs like a not-so-charming shower of dirt. His nose wrinkles, not from distaste, but from the air's wicked attempt to remind him it's still early mornings. The only sound accompanying this struggle is the quiet scrape of a metal poker, that trusty relic, possibly the most exciting piece of cutlery in a medieval peasant's kitchen. After all, who needs a blender when you can effectively stab at hot coals like an angry dragon who misplaced his fire breath? Let's take a moment to marvel at this everyday morning ritual. It's like modern coffee preparation, but with a higher chance of waking the cows instead of the neighbors. Mortal peril? Maybe not, unless we're counting the risk of being smacked by the hearth's equally unyielding poker. The best part? This ancient brewing process yields nothing resembling your typical breakfast beverage, but more like a hot mess of hope masquerading as comfort. As he concentrates on the hearth, let's consider a question of utmost importance. If ancient civilizations were to wake up today, would the boy look baffled at a coffee machine and ask, "What sorcery is this?" He'd probably conclude we're merely putting burnt bark in shiny contraptions. And honestly, who could blame him? His morning brew is less of a latte and more of a, "Please don't let me have lost another tooth to the flaming abyss." Ah, warmth. that elusive concept similar to how many medieval peasants viewed cleanliness, a distant dream glittering in the morning sun. More often than not, the cold hearth signifies that breakfast is probably just as cold and uninviting as the air. Usually, it's a hearty turnip stew left over from yesterday, a dish so thrilling it might excite ancient taste buds while depressing modern ones. Every spoonful might already come seasoned with yesterday's achievements, or failures, who's to say? But back to our brave fire starter. He determines that perhaps blowing harder is the key, but instead, he only succeeds in churning up a delightful cloud of ash. It's a rather vivid reminder of many aspects of peasant life. The harder you try, the more you choke. And much like that, medieval life was all about persistence, even if the results often left you gasping for fresh air. Once the hearth finally sputters to life, the boy steps back, unsure if he's conquered a dragon or merely revived an inferior candle. With every flicker of flame, he can almost feel the shadows of hopes and dreams warming just a tad, until his stomach growls, reminding him that all this effort better lead to food, if only so he can survive to wield that poker another day. Now, imagine slicing through that early morning silence with an array of delightful sounds. A rooster squawking nearby, a pig snorting indignantly, and, somewhere in the background, a neighbor attempting to make the day's first bread. Let's just say their approach resembles throwing flour at a wall and seeing what sticks. Definitely not the latest in artisanal gluten-free options. It's decidedly inspiring. If they can manage a shady loaf without a Pinterest board, then who are we to complain about our breakfast situation? Our boy's eyes dart toward the pot over the fire. The stew is bubbling through the gunky surface like a cauldron at a witches' convention. Maybe that's how your breakfast looks when it rolls out of the medieval kitchen. A bit like lunch did last week, with flavors deepened by the ever-present hint of urgency. The stew somewhat resembles gray water, meddled in with a dash of optimism and uncertainty. You know, much like that time you accidentally mixed toothpaste and orange juice. The boy smiles with hope, completely unaware of the culinary tragedy awaiting him. Now, let's talk about how attending to a hearth becomes an initiation rite into the workday Olympics. Imagine having to poke at the flames the way a modern-day employee juggles spreadsheets and emails. If you're not carefully fanning sparks to life, you're battling errant memories of yesteryear's dinners. And do you really want to relive them? It's a delicate balance of survival and reluctance that probably has the boy wishing he could trade places with the rooster. Sure, he may cluck aimlessly around the yard, but at least he wouldn't be held responsible for turning into the family's next meal. Outside, the sun makes a valiant attempt to break through the gloom, casting light on the boy's day, which he envisions as productive. Very much like a meeting with your boss that you know will go off the rails. One could almost foresee what's in store. Toil and sweat, and, turns out, possibly more mud than any medieval farmer bargained for. The boy takes a moment, mentally preparing for life's quirky unpredictability, the kind that molds character much like the turning of soil. Somewhere out there, noblemen gallivant around their lands atop splendid steeds, while our valiant boy sharpens his skills at awakening the family hearth. Yes, his labor may seem invisible, but in reality is the mighty foundation upon which medieval nobility sits comfortably. Because without the trusty boy, how would the noble folk know the warmth of a fire, or even how to cook something that doesn't resemble a seasoned rock? And so, armed with an ember, a pot of questionable stew, and an overactive imagination filled with dreams of sugar plums and sunny fields, our young champion heads outside. Whether he can vanquish the day's obstacles or simply end up face down in the mud remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure. Laughter will often ring louder than any hearth while feasting on the absurdities of life that bind them all. That's medieval existence for you, as enchanting as staring at the wall for hours and miraculously laughing at the tragedy of it.
Law. Chapter 4.
Woolly tunics and the battle of cold mornings. Ah, the crack of dawn. You wake up groggy, wondering if you've just been tossed into a medieval rendition of Survivor, the cold edition. You reach for your wool tunic, which feels like wearing a bristly goat for a morning hug, except the goat would probably be more cuddly. Scratchy, rough, and perhaps mysteriously pieced together by an industrious knitting clan, your attire offers zero hope of warmth or comfort. It's colder than your last social interaction with that one friend who thinks, "Please don't," means, "Please do." As you stare blearily into the first light of day, fellow peasants hastily pull their own wool garments over simple linen shifts, resembling a grumpy assembly line of medieval fashion statements. The icy tendrils of dawn wrap around you, as if Mother Nature herself has decided to play a cold-hearted prank. You think about the adorable little hairs on your neck standing at attention, like tiny soldiers ready for battle against winter's merciless chill. It's like a frozen reunion of hair follicles discussing life choices. Now, have you ever tried to tie back your hair while maintaining some semblance of ultimate dignity? Good luck. You watch as comrades shove their hair beneath crisp, white linen coifs, transforming into somber medieval warriors. A far cry from the sleek-haired nobility, but let's be real, they probably wouldn't want to trade. The coif fits so snugly, it's almost a corporeal near-death experience. It's less fashion statement and more sophisticated hair prison. It's hard to feel regal when your scalp resembles that of an overcooked potato. And have you ever noticed how no one actually talks about the unflattering smell of early mornings? The faint whiff of wet wool fills the air, an aroma reminiscent of a damp dog who just waded through the local bog. If only there were some sort of medieval fragrance line. Eau de farmyard, for when you want to keep your friends at a safe distance. Congratulations, you think. You've been granted the privilege of joining your fellow peasants in a rousing early morning session of freezing. It's like an underground cult of coldness, where the only membership requirement is chattering teeth and a breathing technique that can rival a dragon's exhale. Because who needs warmth? With every fleeting second, the morning frost seems to gnaw on your fingertips, much like a particularly aggressive squirrel nibbling on an acorn. You glance around, wondering why this early morning has a similar vibe to the dark abyss of your last online meeting. At least in the medieval world, you can rest assured that muted faces and awkward pauses are now replaced with the polite, "don't freeze to death" stares shared among your peers. Let's discuss the hearth's warmth, or lack thereof. You shuffle your feet to the kitchen, kicking 7th-generation mud clumps like the surely unearned bonus feature of your living conditions. The hearth isn't just a heating source, it more closely resembles a temperamental creature. If it were a pet, you'd have to whisper sweet nothings to coax it into functionality. How's that for morning motivation? Come on, Bessie the hearth, just one little spark. As the flames sputter, your stomach growls, a reminder that whatever stew lurks in the pot might want to spring into action as well. Who need a gourmet breakfast when you might just reheat yesterday's turnip mishap? Honestly, even a 3-star restaurant would be hard-pressed to sell such a delightful dish. The thought crosses your mind. Could yesterday's cold gloop be the culinary equivalent of a science experiment gone rogue? Spoiler alert, yes, it could be. Despite the deep-seated dread hovering over the prospect of breakfast, a few of your fellow peasants emerge from their clutches of wool and stubbornness with fierce determination in their gazes. This isn't merely a meal, it's the dawn of a new battlefield, where yesterday's leftovers get a warm-up, and the hope of survival hangs in the air like a stubborn cloud of stewed uncertainty. The joy of having a little warmth. It's like enjoying that first sip of coffee on a Monday morning, if coffee had a chance of reenacting every popcorn kernel you've ever swallowed. The sun ambles its way into the sky at a leisurely pace, slowly but surely casting a feeble glow upon your mud-soaked existence. You squint, adjusting to the world's view, where any nearby noblemen are gallivanting around in their extravagant attire, undoubtedly thinking themselves champions of sophistication. Nobility zipped around on their handsome steeds, utterly unaware that their comfort is built on a mountain of invisible labor known as everyday peasant life. You and your fellow troops in wool stand together with bristly camaraderie. After all, without your tireless efforts, the very hearth they cling to would simply be an oversized, ornate mantelpiece of dust. Imagine the awkward silences at nobility dinners. By the way, how's your fire? Terrible? Yes, that's my fault. Sorry. Together, you make a pact. This day might be filled with challenges, mud clinging to boots, wild turnips staging a revolt. But at least laughter will follow you like a wacky, lovable sidekick on this absurd adventure. With this newfound resolve, you breathe in deeply, only to find one of your cohorts produces fodder for a story that will echo through the ages. Remember when we thought this morning would not be one for the books? Did we just become part of a living history book? Yes, indeed. Medieval life is like a strange mashup of a social experiment and poorly orchestrated slapstick comedy, laced with some dark humor. So here you are, standing in the thick of it. The invisible labor that builds noble life now rests upon your fragile shoulders, mixed with quite a bit of cold, wet wool. And if that's not a laugh, well, what is? Chapter 5. Through the Stone Corridor of Servitude. Hey guys, welcome to a night of slightly chilly medieval humor and intriguing absurdity. Whether you're wrapped in a duvet or searching for that sweet spot on the couch that can magically absorb all your worries, tonight's journey is colder than a troll's handshake and more peculiar than a noble's pet squirrel. We're diving into the delightful chaos of medieval servant life, where the invisible labor supports an extravagant existence, all while you're hoping to sneak in some restful sleep. But first, a little favor. If you enjoy the experience tonight, kindly hit that like button, maybe subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. But only if you actually enjoy this. No pressure, promise. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan to really set the scene, and snuggle into whatever cozy cocoon you've prepared. Think of this moment as stepping into your own time machine, powered by a bizarre blend of wool and laughter. Have you ever thought about what it was like to be a medieval scullion? Is there a manual for dodging judgmental glares from stewards with a significant keychain collection? And how does one really embrace a life where the most glamorous moment involves cleaning out kitchen pots that harbor actual bad memories? Picture it. You wake up one morning, and instead of facing the soft glow of your smartphone, you're staring at the stone walls of a cold corridor. Congratulations, you've just awoken in 1300 AD, where your morning routine may or may not include brushing hay out of your hair. As you wander the chilly stone corridors, those hefty walls loom like slightly grumpy guardians of medieval secrets. Your fellow scullion, let's call her Agnes, steps aside, her eyes dutifully fixed on the floor, as if a family of dirt crumbs is performing an elaborate ballet. She knows her place, and heaven help anyone who accidentally lifts their gaze towards the key-carrying steward. Those keys jangle ominously, echoing through the halls like a warning bell announcing, "Steer clear, dangerous authority on the loose." Now let's paint the picture a little more vividly. You're wedged between sweating stone and the memory of last week's cabbage stew, practically floating in an aromatic cloud of regret and bad decisions. It smells like a combination of damp earth and the aftermath of a sustained garlic festival. Ah, nostalgia. And speaking of memories, ever tried to navigate your way through a kitchen filled with more pots and pans than an aspiring knight has armor? It's chaos. Your heart races as you dodge the decidedly serious hierarchy running through the kitchen. At the top, the cook, wielding a ladle like a sword. Below, the scullions, each vying for the affection of the hearth like it's a prize-winning sheep. But here's the wild card. As Agnes sidesteps the imposing steward, a surprisingly philosophical thought flits through her mind. Why on earth am I doing this? It's less existential crisis and more, should I have stayed in bed today? A feeling that translates across the centuries, don't you think? Have you ever looked at your enormous pile of work, sighed heavily, and thought maybe a nap wouldn't be the world's worst idea? Let's talk about those vibes of oppression, shall we? Imagine a massive stone corridor, the type that feels as if it could swallow you whole, where whispers distort around corners, and everyone knows what everyone else is doing, or at least tries to pretend they don't while judging with dramatic flair. It's like staring into the world's least engaging soap opera, where the plots revolve around chores and the occasional missing piece of bread. And there you stand, amidst whispers and bustle, desperately avoiding eye contact with the steward, whose sharp glare feels more effective than a crossbow aimed at an inconsiderate woodland creature. You're like a modern-day office worker avoiding the boss who casually hovers around the water cooler while you simulate productivity. Oh, doesn't my rapt attention to this column of potatoes look important? Yes, truly critical. In the lower ranks of this societal food chain, each scullion attempts to navigate their duties with a balance of trepidation and humorous resilience. They share quick, cautious glances as they scuttle back towards the kitchen. Because if there's one thing everyone understands in this hierarchy, it's that no one wants to become the plot twist that ends in punishment, or worse, a task involving troll droppings, the nightmare. Picture it, whispers of everything from yesterday's cabbage crisis to rumors about whose turn it is to clean the chamber pot fly through the air, lighter than the cook's impossible demands. Every morsel of gossip represents a risk of judgment, and the stakes are high. Is that a chance for promotion, or just more back-breaking labor? Ah, great, the world is my oyster, filled with mud. As your own thoughts swirl around, you ponder the plight of these earnest, underappreciated meddlers who are, let's face it, the lifeblood of this medieval saga. It's like realizing that the unpaid intern at the office keeps everything running. Without them, the whole enterprise would devolve into disarray that even a skilled knight couldn't rescue. In a world like this, every day sees you shattered by humor, cleaning the remnants of yesterday's misadventures and trying to decipher the delicate balance between dignity and dreariness, all mixed with a healthy splash of cold, hard truth. And just like that, you realize that every mundane task you face is layered with history, wrapped in mystery, and flavored with absurdity that would make even a jaded historian chuckle. Now close those eyes and let the sound of clattering pots and suppressive stewards fade into a soothing lullaby of mildly interesting medieval life. The invisible.
Laborers who built noble existence are more than just echoes in stone corridors. They're the threads of laughter that bind us through time, from their peculiar lives to those we lead today. And let's just say, the medieval scullions of history were the original unsung heroes of the home-cooked meal. So with that entertaining thought placed gently on your pillow, let sleep cradle you into the spirit of history, the ghostly giggles of Agnes and her scullion friends watching over you while you drift away into your own medieval reverie. Good night, dear listeners. We'll meet again on the other side of slumber. Chapter 6. The Steward and His Iron Key. Hey guys, welcome back to our sleepy little journey through the wonderfully bizarre world of medieval life, where even the most mundane tasks could make you question your very existence. Picture this. You're standing next to a guy whose sole purpose is to keep track of every piece of furniture, grain sack, and dubious-looking stew pot. Yes, folks, tonight we dive into the life of a steward. Imagine this. The steward, a chap with all the fun of a wet blanket, clutches a large iron key as if it's the golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Spoiler alert, it's not. It's merely the key to the pantry, but you'd think it grants him access to the throne of the Almighty with the intensity he brings to his important duties. You can practically see him relishing the power that comes with being able to open that door. Because, let's be honest, who doesn't love the smell of aging barley and the thrill of stale bread? Yum. But really, what's it like to navigate a morning filled with tedious inventory assessments by the flickering light of a tallow candle? Ever wondered if he ever wished for an espresso machine? Perhaps he daydreams of a world without tallow and heavy keys, a simpler life where coffee flows like a river and spreadsheets compile themselves. Alas, that fantasy is as distant as the concept of personal space in a medieval kitchen. As you peer over his meticulous inventory list, did I mention it's written in what looks like chicken scratch? You realize that vigilance is the name of the game. He ticks item after item off the list. 8 sacks of wheat, 5 barrels of ale, and 3 very questionable hams. His serious demeanor suggests he's engaged in a cosmic battle for the survival of the manor, all while you're just waiting for the candle to drip on the parchment and create a little chaos. As our serious steward's cheeks flush from the warmth of this flickering light, you could almost argue that his expression is reminiscent of someone discovering that they've eaten a fruitcake instead of a chocolate truffle. It's a mix of obligation and sheer horror. But it's not just a quirky scene. It's all part of a fine-tuned routine that echoes through the ages, one that involves a lot of squinting and the occasional headshake of regret. Let's think about our stewards, shall we? They hail from every corner of societal discontent, but they're the backbone of the Lord's triumph or downfall. They calculate, inventory, and occasionally emit low grumbles about the state of the fish that's been sitting out too long. As you roll your eyes while contemplating the state of their physical well-being, you wonder if the thought of fish stew evokes less nausea and more nostalgia about being swallowed by the darkness of an empty room. Flowing out of the village towards the grand castle, the steward's rigid sense of duty can feel like a sluggish river, inching slowly through muck that was probably smeared with chicken feet and old bread. Ever tripped while carrying something heavier than your dignity? For our poor steward, that's just a Tuesday. And there you are, navigating the realm of medieval labor, where every obligation could become a new chapter of an unwritten book. Today's topic: the trials of tracking down rogue turnips. Join as the steward tries not to contemplate the difference between his life and a particularly boring school janitor. Spoiler alert, it's a close call. Let's take a quick detour into our own work lives. Have you ever felt like you're dragging the weight of the world while trying to maintain some semblance of order? We're all one coffee spill away from a total meltdown. The steward stands, frantic and stern, like the HR representative who refuses to let you shield your eyes from the quarterly performance review. You quickly catch yourself wondering if medieval stewards secretly fantasized about being rock stars. Steward by day, rock legend by night, belting out ballads about poorly organized cupboards and the unending quest for proper spice jars. But while the irony thickens like a badly brewed pot of ale, he stays focused, running his fingers over the grainy parchment filled with countless listings. Imagine the sheer intimacy of his connection to every item: the wayward spoons, the rancid bits of whatever concoction the cook dared to create yesterday. It's bad enough he has to track it all. Toss in the possibility of finding an unclaimed sack of oats, and you have a medieval version of winning the lottery. Only the prize seems to be a slightly less sour stomach. And let's not forget about the candle itself, flickering and sputtering as if it has fallen under the steward's hypnotic stare as well. You can practically hear it questioning its own purpose. Am I just here to illuminate this torturous task amidst the midnight sighs of human clumsiness? Poor candle, trying so hard but often feeling like an unsung hero in a tragic comedy, much like our friend the steward. As the day wears on, the steward meticulously chips away at his list, each item cross-checked like a performance artist's final act before the curtains drop. You hear the clinking of his iron key, the sound that seems to echo down the corridors, much like those echoes of rumbling tummies from the kitchen, more than a little concerned about the stew pot's contents. So here we are, perched on the edge of history, surrounded by squabbling pots and the loyal crew of hard-working individuals, juggling responsibilities that could easily make even the most composed modern professionals pull their hair out. The steward's life is one large, chaotic tapestry, weaving the mundane together with humor, creating a backdrop layered with irony and uncertainty.
Now, drift into this fun, absurd reality where every scribbled inventory could spell fate, while you
Rest easy, knowing that while stewards write their scrolls, you can let the allure of mystery lull you into sweet, peaceful slumber, dreaming of untamed hams and unruly turnips. Good night, dear friends, and may your adventures in sleep feel just as mildly interesting. Chapter 7. Marjorie's Fabled Garments. Hey guys, welcome back to our sleepy little journey through the wonderfully bizarre world of medieval life, where even the simplest tasks could have you questioning whether you really need a nightlight after age 30. Tonight, we find ourselves in a place comfier than a sack of potatoes in a haystack. And trust me, that's not saying much. We're about to explore the realm of fashion, or, as the locals of 1300 AD would call it, the land of woolen woe. Imagine, if you will, the noble solar, a room so exquisite it makes even the least fancy of us feel like we accidentally wandered into a high-end vintage boutique. Picture lavish drapes, hidden treasures, and, nestled within all that splendor, our unsung hero of the hour, Marjorie. A girl so quiet she could sneak up on a church mouse, even in its own church. Now, what is Marjorie doing in this glorious setting? Well, she's laying out fine linen and woolen garments before a chest that looks far too heavy to be practical. Seriously, why do people need such ornate furniture? It's like owning a piano when all you can play is chopsticks. But hey, that's medieval life. It's all about appearances and questionable practicality. Maybe in her hands, these garments are akin to a modern-day influencer's designer handbag, simultaneously coveted and burdensome. But first, let's take a moment to consider. Would wearing a woolen tunic feel like a cozy hug from a sheep, or just a woolly prison sentence? Can you even imagine those heavy layers? It's like trying to sprint in a sleeping bag with a few thousand spiders lurking within. Marjorie's calloused fingers hover above the jewelry, each bauble a temptation. It's hard to tell what she finds less appealing, the jewelry or the lingering aroma of mutton that seems to follow every medieval endeavor. The air carries a hint of lavender, mixed with the not-so-subtle scent of damp wool. As she meticulously arranges the clothing, you can't help but ponder. Does she wish for a magic spell to make these garments launder themselves? Or maybe a dry cleaner with the ethics and charm of a nobleman, yet the efficiency of a well-oiled machine? Spoiler alert, that doesn't exist. Therefore, feeling like you've been rolled in mud after wearing the same tunic for a month is just part of the job description. Now, imagine Marjorie as she dodges the elaborate necklaces. Beneath the opulence lies an irony that could warm even the coldest of medieval hearts. Here she is, arranging the very sparkle of 100 brides, and yet, like a modern-day intern offered the last donut, her fate is to remain unseen. Will she blend in with the fancy wool, you wonder? Or will she become medieval hipster chic, the kind of girl who knows all the best jokes about fidgety turnips? As you picture her, a silent guardian of noble fashion, toiling silently, she carefully lays each garment out with all the graceful precision of a sushi chef crafting the perfect roll. Yes, here comes the tunic, the overly embroidered one that looks like a patchy explosion of mismatched color. Is this what they mean when they talk about individual style? You might chuckle softly, crafting vivid tales in your mind of a clothing competition among noblewomen. Spoilers, it would end in scandal and possibly a duel over who wore more clashing colors. You begin to wonder if Marjorie has a secret desire to take a sledgehammer to the heavy wooden chest in front of her. After all, what lay within? Dresses woven with dreams and draped in societal expectations, along with socks. Yes, the dreadful socks. The type that feel better suited for scaring away bears than for keeping your toes cozy. And yet, here she is, dodging precious gemstones like they are rancid turnips. She's got her priorities straight. But hold on a second. Just as she thinks about her choices, imagine another layer of chaos whisking in.
the ravenous need to avoid every squeak and creak of the ceiling above her. After all, it's the great aristocratic nightmare, a heavy footstep signifying the Lord's impending inspection. Will Marjorie end up crumpled under a pile of taffeta like a modern-day veteran of a fashion faux pas? You can just hear the echoes of a medieval gossip mill going wild. Did you hear about the girl who got crushed by her own extravagance? To add to the absurdity, the jewelry she deliberately skirts could rival a dragon's hoard. Why is there so much bling, you might wonder? Is it a rebellious attempt to distract from boredom, or merely another way of saying, I've got flair, but very few good ideas? And therein lies the quiet comedy of it all. Marjorie immerses herself in a world where garments signify status, yet here she stands, the invisible worker of a curious society, attempting to keep up appearances at all costs, even when wearing the equivalent of a cushion strapped to your back. After all, would you rather deal with a poorly made garment or the guilt of a phony dress that barely fits? As you think about Marjorie, drifting delicately through her solar, you realize the absurdity of her reality. Each day, she navigates a labyrinth of fine garments, peculiar silks, and unyielding expectations about what it means to look noble, like an over-enthusiastic medieval clown trapped in a fashion show, feeling equal parts chaos and comedy. And so, sleep's gentle tendrils wrap around you, granting you a final chuckle with visions of Marjorie slip-sliding away with tunics and dresses that could spark 1,000 fairy tales, each twist more absurd than the last. Who knows what awaits her tomorrow? Perhaps an ill-timed jewelry debacle, or an unfortunate dance with a particularly flamboyant fabric. So rest easy, dear friends, as we bid adieu to our silent garment goddess, clutching onto dreams of accidentally airborne tunics and non-existent
Laundry days. Good night, days. Chapter 8. The Cook's Conundrum. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of your favorite medieval misadventure, where life was so absurd that not even the best stand-up comedians could find a punchline. Tonight's tale is hotter than a blacksmith's forge and mistier than your grandma's memory of the 70s. We're diving into the lovely world of culinary chaos, specifically the life of a cook in 1300 AD. Buckle up, because I promise you that upon hearing this, you'll be grateful for your microwave. Now, before we get too deep into the swirling smoke of the ancient kitchen, let's take a moment to ponder. Ever tried browning meat over a fire pit while simultaneously avoiding an avalanche of angry rats? Or how about whisking up an egg soufflé without the luxury of a whisk? Just your bare hands and a sheer will to not set the whole kitchen ablaze. Better yet, have you ever summoned the energy to cook for a lord who's perpetually hangry and convinced that the mead must flow is actually a life motto? Well, congratulations, you've just woken up in the bustling heart of a medieval kitchen, or, as I like to call it, the sizzling sanctum of stress. The air here is thick with the mouth-watering scent of roasting meat mixed with the slightly unpleasant but entirely memorable aroma of burnt offerings, like that last third of a pizza you forgot about in the back of your fridge. It's a bit chaotic, a whole lot dramatic, and mostly smoky, like a dive bar meetup for all the misplaced spices in town. Imagine stepping into this scene. You're greeted by the cook, a large, intimidating figure who resembles a bear that's consumed one too many tankards of ale. His hair is a wild mess of flour and soot, while his apron bears the evidence of countless mishaps, both culinary and accidental. He stands over a fire pit that seems more like a portal to another dimension, perpetually smoking and hissing like an angry goose that just lost a game of chess. Don't just stand there, lad. Get the meat. No, not that one. The good meat. The better one with fewer bite marks and a hint of musty charm, the cook bellows, waving a wooden spoon like a knight brandishing a mighty sword. You know, the kind of weapon that's less about honor and more about scaring off the neighbors who dare to look at your kitchen's shambles. But wait, here comes the second servant. He arrives, stumbling a bit as he swings in with a pot that's reminiscent of a medieval bowling ball and tries desperately to impress the cook. "I'm here, sir," he says, enthusiasm bubbling like a pot over directed heat. Unfortunately, that enthusiasm is about to get steamrolled. "You call that pacing? You're moving slower than a tortoise in treacle. Get a move on, or you might as well fetch better company from the local barn." It's like a motivational speech crossed with a well-practiced roast. As you stand there, feeling the haze of smoke curling around, you like an overly affectionate cat. You can't help but wonder, how did meals of the medieval elite become such a production? You could almost liken it to prepping for a high-stakes dinner party where your guests are barbarically disheveled raiders, and your prized cattle are less likely to survive the evening than your exquisitely roasted turkey. Speaking of meat, you're standing there, contemplating whether they're grilling dinner or merely trying to enact revenge on some long-suffering chicken. Every time the cook gives a, "well, that should do it," nod, you spot the second servant practically drenched in sweat, chasing after open flames while attempting to juggle wooden spoons like a misguided juggler at a carnival. And seriously, have you ever witnessed such acrobatics outside of a circus? The chaos intensifies as the cook proceeds to make sure you're all aware of the unforgivable sins, like accidentally serving boiled carrots instead of the intended roasted ones. If he thought the line thrown at the fidgety servant was hot, wait until he gets a chance to unleash fury upon any dish that dares stray from the strict royal order. Do you want a bullet in that meat pie, or a slice of proper nobility? Choose wisely. Throughout this culinary catastrophe, the fiery heat presses down, making you feel like you've just joined a reality show with fewer layers of safety and more historically accurate cheese. The visuals are delightful, if terrifying. A dizzying swirl of spices, meat sizzling and spitting like it's auditioning for The Voice, and the occasional hiss of fat that practically begs for a fashionable meal disaster. How romantic, and entirely impractical. With every command bellowed, the tension in the air thickens, as if the entire kitchen has just declared war on the dinner plates. The cook's eyes are like eagles, hunting for flaws with the bravado of a lion over its fresh kill. Faster, it's not a gentle ballet, it's more like an angry jig at a drunken wedding with too much mead involved. Chop chop. Oh, the sheer absurdity. As you sip your metaphorical cup of tea, watching this delightful disarray, just think, how many of us have felt like we're balancing a life on a porcelain plate while aiming to serve fancy meals, all while not setting our hair on fire? Life, much like cooking, sometimes feels like a bemusing blend of high hopes, a frenzied dance of skills you don't possess, and the looming threat of complete disaster. And as the cook roars yet another order in an exquisite symphony of chaos, you realize you're drifting away from the madness. The laughter of the absurd envelops you, and suddenly, the whole medieval culinary experience transforms into nothing short of a beautiful mess. A bizarre, potent potion of hilarity served alongside the flesh of a roast whose spirit begs it to be saved from certain doom. Ah yes, this is the life. Just keep your eyes when the smoke clears. And hope tomorrow's meals involve a tad less drama. Who knew a kitchen could be a front row seat to a Shakespearean nightmare? Settle in, dear friend. Let the cook's conundrums wrap around you gently. It's sure to put a smile on your face and, just maybe, a giggle in your dreams. Chapter 9. The Midnight Roast. Hey guys, welcome back to another escapade into a time when life was as unpredictable as a squirrel on espresso. Tonight, we're diving into a world more sizzling than your nearest traffic jam in July, the bustling kitchen of a medieval manor. And if you think roast beef sandwiches are good, wait till you hear what's cooking. As you settle into your cozy spot, maybe snuggling under a blanket that smells slightly of your last 3 meals, go ahead and dim those lights. Grab a snack, preferably one that doesn't require you to face the kitchen inferno. Or, a snack that's, let's be honest, definitely not roasted mutton,
being watched over by a lad whose biggest fear isn't failing to serve an exquisite meal, but rather being left to fight off the dreaded, grumpy lord of the manor with nothing but a rotten carrot. Now picture this. Have you ever tried balancing a 5-course meal on your lap while driving through a volcanic eruption? Or what about attempting to catch a delicious whiff of dinner while dodging angry livestock? They may throw a fit like a toddler denied their favorite snack. Ever thought about how awkward it would be if the family pet suddenly distressed over a rat during a fine dinner? The drama! Congratulations, you've just woken up in the glorious year of 1300 AD, a year that introduced all things noble and absolutely ridiculous. Today, we drop you into the steamy chaos of a medieval kitchen, where our protagonist, a strong lad named Gaffern, is swinging a massive leg of mutton like it's the world's heaviest pendulum. The fire roars like an over-caffeinated dragon, ready to serve its gong-like roar as Gaffern stands before it, wrestling with the leg like it's the arch-nemesis of his own existence. The flames leap higher, licking at the edges, and competently turning precious food into swaths of charred flavor. You can practically hear the meat screaming in agony, "I'm trying to be delicious, stop burning my chances!" The heat envelops him, creating a kind of sauna effect that would put any modern-day health spa to shame. The smell? Oh, it's everything you've ever wanted, and a bit more. It's smoky, hearty, and just when you think it could get no better, there's the lurking fear of punishment hanging over Gaffern like a shadowy specter that requires him to keep spinning that mutton without losing a finger, or, heaven forbid, improvising on dinner etiquette by serving it well done. As you watch, you can't help but wonder, how did they even prepare this feast without accidentally summoning a food fight? Suddenly, Gaffern loses his grip, and the leg of mutton flops precariously close to the flames, which seem to roar in glee at the potential of a sizzle that could put their fiery hearts to work. In that moment, the lad's epic drama unfolds, and you can't help but stifle a laugh as he yanks it back like it's a stray cat that suddenly
decided to become an acrobat.
"Keep it turning, Gaffern," the cook bellows, a bearded giant with flour dusting his apron like he's just returned from a medieval snowstorm. "I swear if this roast ends up resembling a piece of charcoal, I'll greet you with your next meal personally. Not even the rats will fancy that." It's like a form of medieval motivational coaching, just with a sprinkling of existential dread. As Gaffern painstakingly adjusts his grip, you hear the muffled cries of the mutton, or perhaps they're just the distant pleas of potatoes being peeled in a corner. "Ever considered using tiny napkin hands for roasting, Gaffer?" they might ask. Because frankly, we're not burning like this voluntarily. The kitchen is alive with the sound of clanging pots and helps, which is basically just an orchestral version of stress and chaos. And as the fire cracks like a bad joke in the background, Gaffern realizes he must also dodge incoming projectiles, rotting vegetables thrown by the cook in an attempt to express his frustrations. "Watch it! You'll mix that firewood with my dinner winner like a bad marriage." Here's the kicker, though. At some point, Gaffern thinks he might just be stuck in a culinary version of Survivor. He's strategizing on how to keep that roast perfect while simultaneously hoping to avoid being a direct cause of the next kitchen accident. Like the time someone tried to fry an egg and ended up poaching the whole kitchen. Now that's a lesson in how to lose a finger. As the flames flicker close, Gaffern's focus is impeccable, nearly hypnotic, yet lightweight enough to humorously endure his surroundings. It's a well-choreographed dance. He's a knight in a war against charred dinners, swinging and turning as if he's the lead in an unfortunate musical that never quite decided on its genre. The absurdity of the entire scene tickles your senses as you remember times of post-work cooking frenzies. Only Gaffern's not looking for pre-packaged sauce jars. He's wielding a wooden spoon like it's a lightsaber amid salad wars. every ounce of his concentration wrapped around that glorious roast, like the hopes of every couch potato on a Friday night. Just as you think he's reached peak hilarity, disaster strikes. A sudden wave of heat causing his apron to flutter like the wings of an overly optimistic chicken. The mutton edges ever closer to the flames, its sizzle turning into a frantic hiss, like a cat being unexpectedly dunked in water. You can hardly keep a straight face at this intersection of artistry and impending doom. And as the smoke billows like some misguided fog machine at a medieval rave, you remember, this is not just cooking. It's a battle of epic proportions. Because in medieval kitchens, death is not in the casserole. It's embedded in the chaos with the lingering aroma of charred dreams and perhaps a side of humor. So settle in, dear friend. It's
only going to get delightfully absurd from here.
Chapter 10. The Rush Hour Revival.
Hey guys, welcome back to another snooze-fest adventure through time where we explore how life was as charmingly chaotic as a cat in a room full of laser pointers. Tonight, we're diving into a scene so refreshing, even a cold glass of lemonade would give it a high five. Welcome to the Great Hall of a medieval manor, just after a good old rush sweeping. Now picture this. You've just rolled out of bed after a long night of dreamless sleep, which, spoiler alert, is about as restful as being chased by a chicken with a vendetta. You're probably wondering how on earth people manage to wake up without a single cup of coffee, or the sheer terror of knowing you committed to a workout? As you drift deeper into this dreamscape, imagine the young girls scurrying about with fresh rushes in hand, their laughter echoing through the hall like a chorus of slightly off-tune larks. Ever tried replacing your dustpan with a broom made from hastily tied twigs? Exactly. These young maidens are empowering the concept of spring cleaning that would put even the most zealous of modern cleaning influencers to shame. So, congratulations, you've just woken up in 1300 AD, an age when laundry day indeed meant shoveling your clothes into a river and praying for the best. An optimistic gamble, really. Here you are, slipping into the great hall as a plume of fragrance wafts through the air, courtesy of the freshly laid herbs, lavender and mint mingling with the fleeting good vibes of the last week's leftover meat. Hark! Is that the essence of charred leftovers or a waiver of medieval cologne? Let's talk about the hustle and bustle here. The girls have become the hall's superheroes, brandishing handfuls of fragrant herbs like they're fending off a particularly nasty troll, or perhaps just the stale odors clinging to the floor like an uninvited guest who just won't leave. Picture them dancing through the hall, flinging down rushes and herbs as if they've discovered the world's most effective and most aromatic confetti. Wait, don't throw that, you chuckle silently, remembering the last time you decided to host a potpourri party. It turned into an incensed catastrophe, didn't it? Now back to our sprightly crew who are strewing rushes across the ground, inelegantly masking the not-so-pleasant odors left behind from a week of feasting and, human existence. They seem utterly unaware that these rushes are about to bedazzle the flooring with an avant-garde art project of smell. Just think about it. Almost like a medieval version of carpet, but, with a "you might find a flea or two" bonus. You hear the swishing sounds of rushes skimming over dirt and perhaps the occasional squeak of a rodent, which is actually just life reminding you that personal space was not a thing back then. The gentle rustling fulfills the role of music as the girls skip and scurry. And honestly, have you ever witnessed a warrior in full armor attempt to shuffle through freshly laid rushes? It's like watching a toddler learn to walk on a trampoline. Riveting, yet terrifying. Shifting focus, who needs a gym when you can have a medieval great hall, where the cardio is powered by the occasional leap over a rogue pile of straw? You can almost hear their little stomping feet thumping against the floorboards. Each bounce a reminder that nobody has a personal bubble. Instead, it's personal, "whoops, I just stepped on your toe" territory. Quick, we should fix the odors before Sir Grumpy Pants arrives, one girl exclaims. It seems that even nobles have an olfactory opinion of their surroundings,
Imagine being a nobleman, sweeping into your great hall, only for the overwhelming scent of last week's stew to hit you like a well-aimed cabbage. Talk about peasant displeasure. Now, visualization is key here. You wander through this hall, your trusty rushes giving way underfoot, absorbing all the mysteries of what might be lurking. Perhaps remnants from last year's dance of the jams, or maybe the lost hopes of a chicken hunt gone awry. And just like a bad blind date, you can feel the awkward tension in the air, stark against the herbal freshness that now tries valiantly to save face. This moment strikes you. Are we not all just trying to mask the odors of our own lives? Maybe you just washed that favorite shirt last week, only to have it battle through a busy echelon of spilled coffee, remnants of an impulse buy of street tacos, or the harrowing realization that it's now your gym shirt? Curiously enough, herbs may have been the medieval equivalent of detergent, a creative stab at washing away the traces of yesterday's catastrophes. As the hall fills with the blend of fresh rushes and herb excitement, you can't help but think, isn't it just delightful how in the chaos of life, medieval or modern, we try to patch our existence together with comfort, laughter, and an occasional bad fragrance? So come along, dear friend. Let us embrace the glorious absurdity that is life, where beneath the sweet scent of newly strewn rushes lay stories of celebration, defeat, and the essence of everything remarkably flea-riddled. Who knew that cleanliness was not just next to godliness, but, in this era, also perilously close to the royal bad mood? Don't go too far, because there's still an octave of humor yet to unfold in these hallowed medieval halls, blessed by rushes and burdened by history like a very eccentric time traveler's diary. Let's get ready for more shenanigans as this colorful tapestry of medieval life unfolds.
Chapter 11. The Bell Tolls for Thee and Everyone Else.
Hey guys, welcome back to another sleepy excursion through time, where we find out that history is less about noble knights and glorious battles, and more about the noble art of avoiding chores. Tonight, we're stepping into a scene so surreal, even a bad hair day could feel glamorous. Welcome to the thrill-a-minute world of 1300 AD, where the only alarm clock is a bell that sounds like it has opinions, and the world is waking up, just not very gracefully. Now, I invite you to imagine the moment when everything shifts. The air is thick with that cozy mixture of anticipation and dreadful realization. Picture this: a heavy, silent bell hanging there in the chapel tower, an absolute chatty Cathy just waiting for the perfect moment to ruin your peace. The sky is darkened with silver edges like it just finished its morning coffee and is waiting for the world's first sip. Suddenly, that bell tolls, its low, solemn call reverberating through the manor with all the elegance of a hippo trying to do ballet. The gentle question drifts to your mind. What on earth did they do before alarms? Were people expected to just wake when the sun peeked through their wet dog-smelling rushes and whisper, "Ah, yes, time for pancakes," or not? So let's drop you right where the magic happens, because congratulations, you've just woken up in 1300 AD, the year the world realized that morning routines could involve several layers of crankiness. Now, as the bell chimes through the hall, the young girls of the household leap from their slumber as if shot out of a cannon. Their giggles float through the air, mimicking the sound of 1,000 little bells themselves, as they scurry about in a half-awake frenzy, the kind you'd expect if someone announced free pastries in a sleepy suburb. Who needs caffeine when you have the gentle nudge of impending chaos? Salty air mixes with the earthy tones of straw and hints of lavender left from last night's rush-strewing extravaganza. You see, the very essence of a medieval morning is 1 part serenity, 2 parts bewildered young maidens who have just realized that the kitchen will not clean itself. Ever tried to make breakfast with a group of people who communicate in high-pitched shrieks more often than words? It's like a reality show, Survivor, Morning Edition, where the prize is getting a perfectly scrambled egg without staring into existential dread. As the bell rings, the scramble grows more chaotic, like a heated soccer match. "Quick, fetch the water," one girl screams, hands flapping as if she's trying to take off rather than prepare for the day. The thought arises, did they ever consider just sipping from the pitcher on the table? No? Smart move. It's less about hydration and more about risk assessment in the treacherous arena of medieval living. Let's take a moment to revel in what the magical sounds of that bell represent. It's
Not just a wake-up call. It's like the ancient version of an all-hands meeting, but with no one being entirely prepared. Where are the knights? Who knows? They're likely still fumbling around in their armor, which is probably dented in all the wrong places from the last feast. And breakfast? Well, in their defense, it's not like there's a Starbucks around the corner to save them from burnt bread. Our youthful maidens, bustling back and forth, suddenly launch into a collaborative effort to create the world's most complex breakfast ritual. It looks like an interpretive dance of sorts, involving flour, eggs, and perhaps a singing chicken that's auditioning for The Voice. Ever had your breakfast end with a surprise ingredient, like a feathered friend? The excitement just doesn't quit in this time period. As they maneuver around each other, buckets of water and flour flying like Excalibur itself, you can't help but wonder what parents were like back then. Did they sit back, sipping tea while yelling, "Do your best, my dears, just don't burn the house down"? Spoiler alert, it's not just waffles at stake. The air fills with the aromas of morning, a heady mix of fresh rushes, leftover herbs from yesterday's feast, and the lingering essence of, well, whatever that was. It's a curious concoction, reminiscent of modern-day food festivals gone tragically wrong. The subtle spice and savory scents might have you dreaming of breakfast burritos, only to find you're instead in a realm of slippery grass and ambition-soaked stew. Amid this culinary spectacle, the bell tolls again, echoing the urgency of the moment, urging everyone to wrap up their frantic preparations and present their best faces to the lord of the manor, a task just as exhausting as herding cats. Can you imagine the lovely surprise he'll receive upon entering, greeted by a symphony of half-made porridge? The stench of burnt bread would surely knock his nobility off its high horse. As the commotion continues, keep this thought in mind. Behind their laughter and chaotic endeavors lies the unsung tale of the laborers whose unseen efforts shaped everything from meals to manners. Folks, even peasants knew how to throw a good breakfast party, even if all they had was passion for food and an entire field of rushes for decorative flair. So here you are, soaring through time and giggles, as the bell tolls for another round of medieval mayhem, reminding us all that while life may sometimes feel like walking on eggshells, metaphorically or otherwise, there's always an excellent chance for laughter amid the clashing of pots, pans, and noble expectations. Don't forget, the invisible labor of the past bubbles beneath like a well-boiled pot, and who knows what hilarity lies just around the corner. And with that, dear traveler, let's see which whimsical incident awaits you next in these noble medieval halls, where even the bell seems to have a punchline waiting to unfold. Chapter 12. Velvet Cushions and Shadowy Counts. Hey guys, welcome back to another delightful, sleep-inducing waltz through history, where we find that being noble is much like wearing a heavy crown made of regret, an exquisite show on the outside, a headache within. Tonight, we enter a scene more lavish than a cat meme going viral. Welcome to a vaulted stone chapel in 1300 AD, where the sound of solemn prayers feels just a tad overwhelmed by the quiet distress of a few servants waiting in the wings. Picture it, the noble family, draped in rich, embroidered cloaks that likely cost more than a small village's worth of sheep, kneels on plush velvet cushions. You can almost hear the fabric whispering, "More gold thread, please." Meanwhile, a handful of permitted servants lurk in deep shadows like the extra awkward participants at a high school reunion,
condemned to count the eternal minutes while prayers go on for what feels like an eon or two. Ever found yourself stuck at a meeting that could have been an email? Now imagine that multiplied by 100 with the addition of occasional "God save us from burnt toast" interjections echoing off ancient stone. You know you would rather be anywhere else, like sorting out your sock drawer or staring into the abyss of your fridge. It just begins to hit you. What on earth do noble families pray for? A successful harvest? No food poisoning? Or simply that the butlers keep their specialties from being served as potluck surprise? There's a surreal elegance to this chapel scene, the scent of incense swirling like the gossip of the courtier class, while rounds of monotone whispering take place. As the family prays, do they wonder if the lady-in-waiting overheard the latest scandal involving a goat and a nobleman's wash basin? Ah, the treasures that could surface in divine conversation, or maybe just mediocre tattle. But here lies the heart of the matter. While they pray for blessings, we must also consider the unseen, the invisible labor that sustains such opulence. Only a few feet away, the servant staff, standing in those shadowy corners reminiscent of introverted houseplants, totally aware they will still be dragging out the floor rushes and banishing rats long after the nobles vacate. You might imagine them thinking, "This prayer sounds nice, but I'm still on the hook for scrubbing those royal boots." While the family unravels the mysteries of divine favor, let's indulge in picturing the clandestine nocturnal opera that unfolds among the servants post-prayer. Here's a real question. Ever tried to do your chores with half your mind on the latest news circulating? Having prayers sung softly in the background while gearing up to wrestle a muddy pitchfork, it's like trying to vacuum while your partner serenades you with their favorite ballad. Sweet, yet utterly distracting. The clang and clatter of utensils, the whispers of secrets squeezed between the charged air of
pious proclamations and an abundance of sheer nobility. The paradox is a tapestry rich with humor. Imagine how these velvet-cloaked nobles would fare if they had to fetch a bucket of water, or, heaven forbid, clean the dried peas off the floor. It's like throwing a debutante ball where everyone only shows up to complain about the meal. The additional twist? The chapel walls are thick enough to keep sound muffled, wrapped around like a secret only you and your pet goldfish are privy to. What do the poor servants think while standing in the shadows, straining to catch every syllable? Perhaps they share secret smiles, somehow bonding in their shock that Lady Arabella has absolutely no idea how to maintain her shimmering gown without ruining 5 layers of reputation along with it. And let's pause for a moment of appreciation. Those everyday heroes wielding brooms and brushes in the dim corners share an unaxial comedy that rivals any slapstick routine. Ever thought about how the style of invisible labor creates a layer unseen yet essential, like a well-placed carpet that may also double as a rat runway? Yes, they're juggling etiquette while hoping to not trip over Lady Elsie's embroidered ankles. So while divine bluster fills the air with its mystical aroma, perhaps of lavender, or the slightly less regal smell of desperation, under the watchful gaze of stained glass, it's the unsung laborers who true life unfolds for. The magnificent rituals come alive not only because of noble aspirations, but the cracks in the system handled by those unafraid to wield a mop. As prayers drift between pious thoughts and theatrical whisperings about the nobleman's flatulence, remember the magic hides in the mundane, in the return of the true story. Behind the artisanal flourishes and embroidered garments lies sweat, laughter, and the occasional existential crisis involving bread. In this scenario, dreamers wade through not only cornices and cushions, but also the delightful tension between those who live in the lofty realms of luxury and those whose backs end up supporting its softy, swanky foundation. A world so finely embroidered on the surface? It's just one dandy tear away from a hilarious descent into chaos. And with that loopy humor swirling around like leaves caught in a windstorm, dear traveler, let's waddle into the next whimsical adventure.
and see what lay beyond velvet cushions, perhaps within a nearby kitchen or an intrigue-ridden courtyard where the past tickles the funny bone. A world awaits that might just fill your dreams with culinary disasters and absurd, noble antics.
Chapter 13. The Manor as a Living Beast.
Hey guys, welcome back to this cozy little nook in the annals of sleepwalking through history. Tonight, we're about to explore a place that might as well have had its own social media presence, glamorous Instagram captions, and behind-the-scenes footages. Welcome to a medieval manor, where the very walls seemed to breathe and the elite thrived while someone else scraped the dried food off the floor. Imagine this. The manor, stout and proud, standing tall like a middle-aged dad at a barbecue, unyielding in structure but teeming with hidden life. Each stone wall served as sturdy skin for this living, breathing entity, heavy with tales and whispers larger than the very chandeliers that hung above the heads of unsuspecting nobles. The beams, made of timber firmer than a yeast-free loaf, held up a ceiling that echoed with conversations about the latest goings-on, a blend of ambition and hot air thicker than a noonday stew. Now here's the kicker. While the family within indulged in banquets laden with roasted meats and spicy talk of sugar-coated politics, invisible laborers became the very blood coursing through the manor's veins. Their hands were constantly at work, scrubbing, lifting, and passing without much recognition, like the person doing your taxes, unnoticed but crucial. Picture a warm evening. The sunlight hits the great hall just right, casting a golden glow where velvet banners hang like the sofa throws of an interior designer gone rogue. All that elegance, and yet, just a few feet away, a brigade of unseen heroes bends over baskets heaped high with a variety of questionable origins. How do you keep a manor running without breaking a sweat, you ask? It's like trying to put together IKEA furniture with no instruction manual. The pieces are there, just not in the right order. Ever thought about how they handled dust? You ponder, drifting into that delightful slumber. Well, since these nobles believed in keeping their woodwork as pristine as a too-hot pizza slice fresh from the oven, they had servants dedicated solely to polishing and dusting. Can you picture it? One poor soul holding a polishing cloth, chasing invisible dust bunnies that might become the next great scandal themselves. Did you see Lady Priscilla's left shoe? Dusty. Now, your imagination may dart down that slippery slope of curiosity. Were there medieval air fresheners, you wonder? A fancy way to mask the odor of a gamey pheasant? I hate to disappoint, but the manorial odor was likely more rich country air with a hint of farmer's market gone slightly awry. If you thought your roommate's last tuna sandwich stank, sweet prince, you had zero experience with living where the scent of livestock mingled freely with Sunday roast. As you drift deeper into thoughts of potpourri, probably made from herbs that had given up, let's look into what happens once all the rich sustenance
Is consumed. Yes, indeed, they had to deal with the aftermath, the glorious cleanup. With mirrors reflecting light in a manner that could practically start a fashion trend, the unnoticed laborers were left with a monumental task. Not just a haphazard sweep, mind you, but a masterclass in restraint, waiting for the meal to end with bated breath, lest a footman slip on a well-placed grape and invoke family drama slimier than the manor's stew. And while everyone gorged themselves on meats seasoned with exotic spices that cost more than a village's worth of sheep, these invisible laborers were left to downshift and tackle the kitchen. Imagine the scene. One servant stirs a pot, distracted by thoughts of where Lady Arabella's embroidered gown ends up after a night of balancing on a too-small chair, while another surveys the battlefield of dishes like a commander at the height of battle. Will they be victorious against the mountain of pans? But don't let me paint too solemn of a picture. Searching through the kitchen, you might just stumble upon secret mud pies made of flour and old secrets. Ever found yourself caught in a moment of culinary adventure when all you wanted was a late-night snack? Imagine the servants trying their hand at dessert, only to find oh-so-lucky results that might be regarded as interesting at best. What flavor is that? There's always a risk of a potato turning into a pastry with their improvisational flair. Post-cleaning, however, the real shenanigans began. As evening settled, it wasn't just nobles boot-scooting across the dance floor. No, there was an entire chorus of snickering from the shadows as the laborers swapped tales. Yes, tales of the ridiculousness from earlier in the day. If you think low-key banter at work is entertaining, try hearing about Lord Edwin's horse getting butt sprayed from behind the nearby shrubbery. Sure, the nobles danced and pretended that their lives were about absolute refinement, but near the heart of the manor pulsed a different kind of energy. It was a web spun from the dust between stone walls and laughter shared like mischief at midnight. A place that thrived on the tension between the artists and the laborers, pushing history forward while no one noticed the invisible hands making it all possible. And so, dear traveler, as you nestle into comforts of your own, perhaps a t-shirt with an ironic quote, or an oversized blanket with too many layers, don't forget that the very lives we ponder were built upon stories of those not spotlighted. History, after all, is as delightful as it is absurd. As you let the echoes of fervent laughter and invisible labor draw you nearer to sleep, remember, there's a whole world watching, and the only thing more enduring than noble lineage might just be the laughter shared by those who kept the castle running, even while wearing an apron, cooking up a storm. Now let's explore beyond those stone walls and see where else the noble life took us, possibly to where that kitchen pie might finally meet its fate, or dive deeper into the next adventure of unexpected history flowing through this living castle. Chapter 14. The Culinary Crusade. Hey guys, welcome back to another restful expedition through our historical time capsule, where we take a snooze while exploring the somewhat smelly underbelly of the medieval kitchen. Tonight, it's all about the bustling life behind the scenes of a noble's feast, where the only thing sharper than the kitchen knives, as we'll see in a moment, was the wit of the cook himself. Now, speaking of sharp objects, a gentle reminder to be cautious of those gleaming knives while you're delving into what's likely the culinary equivalent of a raucous game of dodgeball. Yes, it could get messy. Have you ever had a kitchen disaster where you desperately pretended that your soufflé was just a unique pancake? Well, our medieval cooks were likely having similar daydreams about their burnt offerings being abstract art. But first, let's talk about the not-so-great job of scullion, those brave souls responsible for the unseen culinary ballet that went on day in and day out, chopping, stirring, and diving for cover at a moment's notice. Ever wondered what it feels like to dodge flying kitchen utensils while trying to keep your toes intact? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1300 AD, where chaos reigns and the stakes are higher than trying to impress the in-laws with your cooking skills. Picture this. You're in a vast kitchen, the air thick with the scent of roasted animal parts, a delicacy to some, but for the weak of stomach, it's something resembling medieval horror. Just then, the head cook enters, wielding a gleaming knife like he's the warrior of Worcestershire, ready for battle. With a flourish born of rehearsed drama, he slams that knife into the wooden block with a force that reverberates like a battle cry. The sound echoes sharply off the stone walls, causing nearby scullions to jump back as if they'd just seen a ghost in the onion sack. "Watch it!" shouts the cook, his voice as smooth and sharp as the very blade he commands. "The only thing that burns in this kitchen is your ineptitude." And you can almost hear the collective gasp as if someone's just proposed adding beets to a salad, which, if you dared to ask, might just lead to a kitchen coup. Now these scullions, bless their hard-working hearts, are tasked with the most arduous duties, like a group of underpaid interns at a never-ending food festival. They chop, stir, and deflect criticisms from a cook who could send a chill down the spine of a frozen chicken. Picture a horde of them bustling about, their hands moving faster than a medieval jester's jokes would fly over the heads of the lords and ladies enjoying their feasts. But wait, what exactly are they cooking? Picture a cauldron bubbling with ingredients that could make even a medieval witch feel underwhelmed. Sure, you thought your last creative dinner was a tad unorthodox, but when your menu includes things like porridge, boiled cabbage, and whatever leftover meat got relegated to experimental, it's pretty clear. What's that you say? Did they have restlessness about leftovers in the 1300s? The undeniable answer is yes. Now let's focus in on that magical cauldron, as if it were the center of the universe itself. Imagine it bubbling away with enthusiasm for whatever it might concoct, scenting the air with hints of mystery and the faint tragedy of what remains. You'd think this could only be rivaled by a trendy cafe serving up artisanal avocado toast for far too much money. But no, here the palate runs dangerously low on options, with meals often blessed with a sprinkle of regret. "Which of you knows how to bake bread?" bellows the cook, a question booming and reverberating like thunder under an ominous sky. But the only response is the faint sound of someone nervously checking their fingernails or pretending to inspect the last radish's shape. One brave soul finally stutters, "I can try?" To which the whole room pauses. It's like letting someone into the kitchen with a fusion recipe that combines medieval with modern. A great idea until the bread turns out more like a stone than a loaf. The irony here isn't lost on anyone. The cooks might be skilled at preparing elaborate feasts, but underneath all that dignity exists a chaotic reality as riveting as a trendy cooking show where half the fun is not burning the house down. Yes, even Lady Arabella's beloved venison pie can quickly turn into the evening's running joke about how to make friends with the vague smell of burnt offerings. The camaraderie of the kitchen, though haphazard, transforms this chaos into something special. Perhaps when they weren't balancing the perilous duties of the kitchen, they'd reshape simple leftovers into amusing tales of grandeur. Imagine them time-traveling to the future, recounting their culinary victories like modern-day celebrity chefs, waving a wooden spoon with theatrical flair. "I did create an innovative beet salad, and it was supposed to be salad, but became the stuff of legends." If the nobles only knew about the culinary shenanigans occurring behind those opulent doors, would they still bask in their privileged ignorance? Would they still savor that roast boar with such aplomb if they knew it came from a recipe dodged so cleverly that it nearly escaped culinary scrutiny itself? By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that danced over the ruffled aprons of the scullions, the kitchen pulsed with energy as gales of laughter erupted through the dark. On that noisy stage, with messes of pots and a cauldron that still bubbled ominously, history unfolded in ways that were more vivid and perhaps absurd than anyone could have ever scripted. And let's be real, as you slip further into slumber, it becomes quite clear that while noble life might seem charming, the true artistry of the era stemmed from those invisible hands mixing in a dash of chaos and a pinch of humor, reminding us all that eloquence in gluttony does indeed come from the culinary trenches. So, dear dreamer, as the echoes of clattering pots lull you into a deeper slumber, keep in mind the laughter shared amongst those unseen laborers. History, after all, is more than just noble deeds. It's a kitchen swarming with life, confusion, and witty repartee. A toast, metaphorically of course, to the unsung chefs who turned culinary catastrophe into a favorite tale. And remember, as you dream of medieval feasts, the same laughter echoes across the ages, all from the heart of the kitchen. From the heart. Chapter 15. A Peaceful Life. Hey guys, welcome back to another cozy jaunt through the wonderfully wacky world of medieval existence. Tonight, we're diving into the life of a humble servant, and guess what? It's more chaotic than your family's Thanksgiving dinner. Yes, as you settle in with your warm blankets and cozy pajamas, prepare for a journey that's rougher than the bread served to peasants. Trust me, it's appealing in an "I can't believe it" kind of way. Now, before we run headlong into a medieval kitchen showdown, a gentle reminder. If you're enjoying this peculiar blend of history and humor, maybe take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Only if you actually enjoy this, of course. No pressure, you're not being chased by an angry chef with a wooden spoon. Yet. So, let's get comfortable. Dim the lights to that level just before you want to fall asleep, but your favorite TV show is still blaring in the background. You know the vibe. Turn on a fan. Nothing like the gentle hum of a breeze, like a knight's steed galloping through the hall of your imagination. Ready to go? Let's tackle the life of a servant girl in the 1300s, where every day felt like a brutal episode of Survivor, Feudal Edition. Now, close your eyes. Imagine waking up to the delightful sound of a rooster crowing like a very confused alarm clock. You roll over, contemplating whether it's worth getting out of bed or just hibernating. Spoiler, you have no choice. Congratulations, you've just woken up circa 1300 AD, where every moment counts, especially for that servant girl living in the heart of this culinary chaos. Now, let's talk about our protagonist, shall we? Picture a young servant girl, her hair tucked into a kerchief, lurking slyly behind a very wooden kitchen door. She's not just hiding for fun. This is a trying desperately not to be seen while consuming raw peas situation. Mouthful, she snatches one more handful before anyone notices she's being suspiciously secretive. Who doesn't want a snack while dodging doom from an angry cook? What's for breakfast, you ask? Oh, just a delightful medley of coarse bread and thin, tasteless porridge that looks suspiciously like gray mush. Is that an avant-garde interpretation of culinary creativity? Perhaps. But amidst this gastronomical ordeal, raw peas offer a little rebellion. Tiny, crunchy bursts of life, almost like the green thumbs of the kitchen world whispering, "Hey, it could be worse. You could be eating more porridge." Speaking of kitchen chaos, let's talk about that cook, the verbal gladiator of the culinary world. As she quickly shoves in those handfuls of peas, the cook can be heard bellowing commands like a battle general preparing for a kitchen siege. "You there! Stop daydreaming about a future where bread isn't a weapon of mass gluttony. Get chopping!" He carries on, balancing an intense passion for burnt desperation with the kind of anger usually reserved for missing socks. Seriously, it's not that medieval kitchens were full of high-spirited artisans. Far from it. They were buzzing with tension and running a recipe that called for chaos and, perhaps, a sprinkle of regret. Our servant girl can't afford to waste a precious moment. A second of relaxation could lead to her doom. Why relax when you can jostle about like a caffeinated squirrel? Can you imagine this girl frantically shoveling peas while occasionally glancing toward the door? What would you do in her shoes? Or rather, her tattered woolen sandals? First, you'd probably eat more peas, and then wonder how on earth you ended up in a profession that serves anyone but yourself. It's as confusing as finding your favorite snacks had mysteriously vanished, only to discover they've been relocated to your neighbor's kitchen. Every so often, the air is punctuated with shrieks of, "You call that seasoning?" from the cook, as if pinch of herbs could revive a dish as uninspiring as Lord Plentiful's liquid gruel. It's like everyone in the kitchen got an unsolicited crash course in chaos management, and, surprise, the certification only means you can dodge knives effectively. Casualties of culinary arts are universal, right? Now, through all this, our poor servant girl is zipping around, navigating through a soup of ancient etiquette. Forget about a leisurely Sunday brunch. This is an everyday sprint through what can only be described as Hell's Kitchen, Peasant Edition. Ever had that job where you're manipulated by a team of half-crazed colleagues, all vying for the same donut? This is like that, but for soup. As the day drags on, one would think she'd get the chance to unwind, but nope. Even mealtime is a race against time, and the only silver lining consists of unseasoned peas plucked from the kitchen's defiant vegetable stash. Forget table manners. It's more like, get in, eat quickly, and hope there's still enough time to sneak a raw carrot on the whip-around. And in between this frenetic frenzy of orders and rapid-fire movements, one thought persists through the chaos. Could this be worse? The answer is a resounding yes. The past was unkind, but so was the present. At this moment, she's not only dodging orders, but also the very reality that one day she might end up as breakfast ingredients herself, cooked and served to a particularly hungry lord. So, dear dreamer, as you nestle deeper into your cozy blanket, let the chaos of the medieval kitchen blend seamlessly into your dreams. Picture that poised servant girl, the stealthy pea monster hidden behind the door, boldly declaring her independence one crunchy pod at a time. Life behind the scenes may be frenzied and often a tangled mess, but amid the turmoil, there's always laughter, hope, and just enough absurdity to keep every day interesting. Now tuck that image away as you drift off. You may not be a heroic
Knight slaying dragons tonight, but you're definitely in the mix of something lighter. The culinary antics of our brave little servant girl, surviving one chaotic day at a time. Chapter 16. Feast or famine, hold the finesse. Hey guys, welcome back. Grab your pillow and let's settle in for another delightful adventure through the quirky corridors of medieval life. Tonight, we'll be diving into the culinary world that could only be described as an acquired taste. And by acquired, I mean, please don't throw up from looking at it. Yes, as we explore the wooden table heaving under the weight of austere but seasonal food, you'll soon discover that medieval feasting was about as glamorous as a barnyard dance-off. But first, a gentle reminder. If you're chuckling silently while trying not to wake your sleeping partner, maybe consider liking, subscribing, or even leaving a comment. Only if you actually enjoy it, of course. You won't need to arm wrestle over your favorite snack to do so. Just think of it as sharing a one-legged chicken leg with your neighbor in the Great Hall of YouTube. Now, dim the lights just enough to create a mysterious ambience, similar to wondering whether you actually locked the door while half-heartedly pouring milk into your cereal. Picture that rhythmic hum of a fan as the gentle breeze attempting to cool down your next historical epiphany. Let's ponder for a moment. How do you think those brave souls of the 1300s prepared for meals? Did they have intricate recipes? Or was it more like a forced scavenger hunt with whatever foraged greens they could find? Did someone along the way ask if there was a takeout option, like just sending a messenger to pick up a medieval pizza? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1300 AD, and your first challenge? Feast or famine, hold the finesse. You find yourself at an imposing wooden table, adorned bumpily with rustic charm and a faint scent of, well, let's just say it's a subtle blend of aspiration and desperation. Sounds cozy, right? Gaze longingly at that pile of coarse grains, dried fish, salted pork, and an assortment of foraged spring greens, such as nettles and leeks, all strategically arranged as if put together by the world's least motivating chef. Give it a sniff. Ah, the heady aroma of ambition gone slightly askew. Was it accidentally made in a cauldron while someone practiced their wizardry skills? Perhaps. At this moment, you can envision our servant girl, wearing her best status quo outfit of battered clothing, stealthily eyeing the array of food that may have seen better days somewhere in the last century. Imagine her pondering, do I really want to dive headfirst into this heap of excitement? The strategic decision to go for the salted pork versus the dried fish could be the difference between a mildly regrettable meal or a full-blown comedy of misfortune. Spoiler, she's going for the salted pork. Now, think of every bite the servant takes as an episode on a cooking show that's gone off the rails. The grains feel like they've been sandpapered for added texture. The fish tastes
like it swam through yesterday's news, and those spring greens, Let's just say they were foraged with the utmost bravado and a sprinkle of daredevil spirit. If you've ever bitten into a salad that felt like it was protesting against your existence, you might be getting the picture. Every meal is a battle, you see, waged not just against hunger, but against the ghosts of ill-prepared cuisine and questionable seasoning choices. And let's not even get started on the appetizers. Instead of chips and dip, the medieval equivalent involves the serious gamble of whether the cheese is actually cheese or an imposter made from cow's enthusiasm. As you chew on that delightfully chewy pork, you begin to filter out the odd textures with a sense of resilience that can only be birthed from a life filled with endurance. What is endurance, you ask? It's the same drive that keeps you going at a buffet, even after realizing the salad is just shredded cardboard from yesterday's grocery haul. So what about dinner conversation? Imagine the lively discussions around the table, where expectations are as high as a poorly constructed thatched roof, and conversations often spiral into debates of who would win in a fight, a netted fish or a particularly feisty root vegetable. The night grows darker, your imagination gets bolder, and the possibility of actually enjoying the food brings forth a gentle laughter that, who knows, may even stir up a long-lost sense of camaraderie. And then, as if on cue, there's a sudden, unceremonious bang. The cook, who has probably decided that culinary chaos is the name of the game, has lobbed a rogue piece of bread across the table that lands dramatically near your dishes, like a warning shot fired in a philosophical debate about whether eating too much of this meal could lead to the medieval version of regrets, a tummy ache. Beware the bread, you silently gasp, realizing it is not a mere snack, but rather a metaphor for the unexpected curveballs life throws. You lift your fork, perhaps to protest, or perhaps to accept defeat, and delve into a second plate of whatever this culinary concoction happens to be, negotiating between flavor and fortitude. And so you find yourself drawn back to the potato and poetry that is medieval feasting, where every bite is filled with memories of endurance paired with absolute absurdity. Life perpetrates its own jokes amid the dishes littered across the table, and you can't help but wonder, what culinary mischief tomorrow's breakfast will unravel? Let that whimsical thought linger in your mind as you settle deeper into your dreams. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that meals, much like life, can be a delightful mixture of coarse grains, dried fish, questionable seasoning, and just a sprinkle of humorous chaos. Now drift off, dear dreamer, and may your sleep be filled with dreams of levitating leeks and fish that dance on a plate, nourishing your goofy. Historical Heart. Chapter 17. Hair today, gone tomorrow. Hey guys, welcome back. Grab your favorite pillow and get snugly comfortable as we embark on tonight's historical frolic through a time where the idea of personal grooming looked less like a day at the spa and more like a one-man battle against nature itself. We're diving into the world of medieval maidservants who wielded their combs like mighty swords, fighting tangled hair instead of dragon scales. But first, a gentle reminder. If you're giggling silently at how much more complicated hair care was in the 1300s than matching your socks in the morning, maybe consider liking, subscribing, or even leaving a comment. Only if you actually enjoy it, of course. You won't even need to stage a duel with a medieval knight to do so. Just think of it as sharing the last piece of pie at the Great Hall of YouTube. Now, dim the lights to create an ambiance similar to that slightly creepy feeling you get when you half expect a cat to suddenly jump out of the shadows. Ready? Let's ponder for a moment. How did people keep their hair looking fabulous when the average bath day was somewhere between never and can we use a bucket? Do they have a medieval equivalent of dry shampoo? Like, I don't know, powdered wig bugs? And really, who decided that hairpins made of bone were a fashion statement?
Did medieval folks look in the mirror and think, yes, this head-to-hair ratio needs a pinch more femur? Congratulations, you've just woken up in late medieval England, where Joan, the lady's maid, is gearing up to tackle the tangled mane of her noble mistress. Buckle up. It's going to be a glamorous adventure involving hairpins and wits, where beauty routines often ended in more chaos than charm. Picture this. It's the early morning, and the sun barely manages to creep through the thick haze hanging above the medieval town, kind of like someone trying to squeeze into an old pair of trousers after New Year's. You can hear the fortress-like echo of brass bells calling the townsfolk awake, while birds chirp a disapproving symphony at the untidy state of life. Here's Joan, standing ardently in front of her mistress, wielding a polished boxwood comb like it's Excalibur. As she gently parts the long, dark hair with the precision of a surgeon, if a surgeon was also really bad at following Netflix tutorials, she flicks her focus on a row of sharp, carved, bone-headed pins balanced precariously between her teeth. The last vestiges of good judgment are hanging on by a thread. Gingerly, Joan's fingers weave through the hair, parting strands while trying not to think of their last shared meal, overcooked cabbage that was probably one miscast spell away from turning into a blockbuster horror story. You can almost feel the tension in the air. Will this be the day her mistress acquires a fashionable updo? Or will it end with Joan facing the age-old question, how did I accidentally create a bird's
Nest on your head? As she works, there's a certain rhythm to the action. Part, comb, pin, repeat. It's a dance that requires more grace than a three-legged dog at a wedding. But wait, what's the odor? Could it be the oats still sticking to the comb from her breakfast? Or perhaps the residual whiff of last month's obsolete hairstyle? Whatever it is, it's definitely not on the list of approved scents for nobility. Joan continues, her mind wandering, as every good maid's does, to thoughts of the gossip brewing in the village. Could she still find time to catch the latest fuss about Lady Beatrice's terrible tendency to wear the same dress 4 nights in a row? Disgraceful. Thoughts race between her fingers and the strands of hair. She could practically hear the whispers of the townsfolk. I'd rather be tossed into a vat of boiling soup than sport an outdated hairdo. And then, oh no, the delicate, meticulously placed hairpin slips from its precarious position, clattering to the floor with a sound more tragic than the ending of a much-loved bard's tale. It rolls away, gleefully taunting her as it skitters off toward the fireplace, a metaphorical reminder of her daily risks. Would her mistress explode like a shaken soda can if her updo failed? Only time will tell. As Joan lunges for the offending pin like a cat pouncing on a wayward thread, she's struck by a sudden thought. What if she could create a trend? Why not, she muses, make every bird's nest an unclear sign of sophistication? Perhaps she could convince her fellow maidservants that a scruffy hairstyle was the latest noble fashion. Who would be brave enough to sporting something other than sleek decorum? The absurdity of it all sends a chuckle escaping her lips, and she glances up nervously, hoping her lady doesn't mistake it for folly. After finally securing the last pin, more like a seasoned warrior than a harried servant girl, Joan steps back with a smirk of self-approval. Behold, your hair is the epitome of elegance, she proclaims, her voice dripping with mock grandeur, as if announcing the arrival of a royal procession. However, it's hard to overlook the faint odor of a goat lingering in the air, courtesy of yesterday's hay delivery that probably dripped remnants into the noble wardrobe. Perhaps today's fashion isn't everyone's cup of ale after all. And thus, the curtain drops on another hair-raising day in the life of a medieval maidservant, where chaos and beauty collide like 2 reluctant dance partners. You can't make this up, can you? Drift off now, dear dreamer, and let your slumber be filled with aspirations of glorious locks, hairpins that never misbehave, and a world where cabbage doesn't haunt you in your dreams.
Chapter 18.
The Royal Gossip Mill. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we find ourselves meandering through conversations that are more tangled than a night's battle with a particularly frisky frog. That's right, we're diving into a realm where courtly gossip flows smoother than that vintage mead you probably enjoyed far too much at the last holiday feast. Imagine for a moment the delicate balance of power achieved through every dramatic pause and breathy sigh. It's all about maintaining an aura of refined chaos amidst a whirlwind of nobles ready to roast each other over the slightest of fashion faux pas. I'm talking about a melodrama that would put our modern reality shows to shame. So grab your favorite pillow, snuggle deep into your blankets, and prepare for a royal romp through the whispering winds of medieval life. But before we cartwheel into the past, a gentle reminder. If you happen to find yourself chuckling or nodding along, consider giving us a like, subscribing, or even leaving a comment. Only if this little escapade tickles your fancy, of course. After all, sharing this awesome treasure trove of hilarity is like sneaking an extra piece of cake from the banquet table. Wonderfully delightful and sneaky fun. Now, as you dim the lights and make yourself comfortable, think cozy blanket forts rather than overly fancy ballrooms, let's ponder the following questions. How many layers of fabric does it take before you can't possibly move? What would happen if you wore the same outfit 2 days in a row at court? Would your gossip-loving friends form a support group, or would it be more of an intervention? And why, oh why, did medieval nobles consider hats as outrageous as a car horn in a library? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1300 AD, a time when fashion choices were dictated by an intricate web of scandal, rivalry, and enough hair products to last the swamp monster a millennium. Let's talk about the art of eavesdropping, because in noble circles, if you're not listening to the tea spilling, you might as well be napping in a haystack. The sun still drizzles light across the hastily adorned walls of a noble's solar, the sitting area where nobility pretends to care about political alliances while maintaining a keen interest in Lady Marjorie's unfortunate decision to wear that dress made of moth-eaten tapestry during last night's feast. Between the clinks of goblets and the shuffling of extravagant gowns, your eyes are drawn to Joan, the lady's maid, who possesses a remarkable talent for keeping her face neutral as her mistress launches into a poetic vignette about a landslide scandal involving Count Reginald and a rather poorly timed supper in the company of 3 suspiciously charming goats. Joan stands there, ready with an array of hairpins clearer than a battleground after an overly loud debate. She listens intently, nodding as though each piece of gossip is the most important nugget of wisdom since someone decided to invent powdered wigs. Her face is a perfect mask of agreement, reflecting every glance, pause, and sigh with the skill of a seasoned performer. One might say she's the very Marie Kondo of emotions, retaining only the feelings that spark joy, or, at the very least, decent chances of not being brutally chastised. As you take all of this in, you can almost hear the whispers of scandal thickening the air around you. "Did you hear?" says Lady Agatha, stirring the pot like she's about to create the world's worst soup. "Lady Beatrice is expecting her 5th child, and the only thing bigger than her belly is the rumor mill." Such embarrassing tidbits float around like dandelion seeds on the wind, and Joan, with the agility of a cat dodging a wayward knight's sword, strategically weaves between the murmuring crowd, collecting each sprinkle of chaos like it's a precious spice for her mental recipe book. Joan can't help but wonder, what will happen if Lady Beatrice's husband, Lord Alaric, discovers the rumors brewing behind his back? Will the court erupt into a chaos rivaling that of a chicken placed unceremoniously on a medieval table during a feast? Perhaps. Or maybe everyone would get too distracted by the new fashion of multicolored shoes. Because let's face it, nothing says nobility quite like a pair of mismatched foot coverings. The air grows thick with the extravagant fragrance of beeswax candles and leftover festival bread as the ladies chatter on, weaving tales more colorful than a peacock at a dress rehearsal.
You can practically hear the faint echo of Joan's thoughts. If I play my cards right, perhaps I can sell a tale of my own and retire to a simpler life as a goat herder. After all, their gossip circles are far less dramatic. All this while, the lady's hair wonderfully defies gravity and reality, a perfect testament to the hours spent in this chaotic orchestra of identity, ambition, and just a sprinkle of ridiculously bad decisions. Joan chuckles silently to herself. If only I could convince everyone that my admittedly questionable pin placement is a new artistic trend. But alas, she knows full well that convincing the nobles of anything is as tricky as making a peasant believe that the Lord's harvest is bountiful when it's actually resembling a sad pile of wilted root vegetables. As the echo of laughter and gossip blurs into the distance, you realize that Joan may just be keepsaking the innermost secrets of the noble class while managing to delicately dodge the falling anvil of someone else's bad decision-making. That's her role, part hairstylist, part therapist, and all-around expert on the intricacies of social balance. So there you have it, a mysterious landscape of feathered hats, sprawling gowns, and side-eye glances worthy of a noble soap opera. Isn't history just the grandest comedy? Who needs a pot of gold when you've got a stack of juicy scandals?
And the ever-present danger of a misplaced hairpin. The absurdity never fails to amuse. Drift off now, dear comet of dreams, and let your slumber lead you down a winding path through the intrigues of noble flatulence and the misadventures of tangled tresses. Chapter 19. The Art of Flinching. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're venturing into a realm that's not just mildly interesting, but also hotter than a blacksmith's forge in July. Yes, we're getting up close and personal with the invisible labor that fueled the majestic lifestyle of medieval nobility. Think of it as the behind the scenes of a grand theatrical performance, where the stagehands are working their tails off, and the leading actors are far too busy tightening their lace collars. Now, if you've ever wondered what life might look like for the unsung heroes of the medieval kitchen, those brave souls who dealt with sputtering fire pits and the wrath of a hangry lord, tonight's your lucky night. And hey, while you're lounging comfortably in your cozy bed, let's ponder these deep questions. How does one properly communicate, "I'm trying my best," when you're a 13-year-old boy with a blistered hand? What did kitchen hierarchies look like? Was it more cutthroat than the latest episode of your favorite cooking show? And why, oh why, is a rogue meat spit the medieval equivalent of a sketchy Wi-Fi connection? So, congratulations! You've just woken up in 1300 AD, right where the rib roasting action is taking place. Picture this, a bustling kitchen where every movement could end in catastrophe, or dinner, depending on your sense of humor. As the salty aroma of roasted meat wafts through the air, you can see a young boy, no older than 13, bravely managing the turnspit. His blistered, soot-covered hands resemble something that would terrify your local medical practitioner. With every turn of the spit, you can almost hear the metallic groan as it fights against the smoldering fire beneath. It's a job that requires equal parts finesse and sheer luck, like trying to sweep the kitchen floor with an active broomstick. In this chaotic little realm, the kitchen is both a sanctuary and a ticking time bomb of culinary disaster. Fires crackle and pop like a medieval pop concert. The smell of meat simmers in a fuggy embrace, clinging to everyone within a 10-foot radius like an awkward first date. Every time the young boy glances nervously over his shoulder, he fears the kitchener's inevitable wrath, a storm brewing with more fervor than a magician's assistant escaping from handcuffs. You can practically hear the kitchener's voice growling behind him, like an agitated hound guarding its cave. If that porcine delight doesn't spin evenly, you'll be skinning a turnip for the rest of the week, lad. The boy wipes a bead of sweat from his brow, only to promptly smear soot across his cheek in a spectacularly juvenile fashion. Who knew medieval face painting could be so on brand? Meanwhile, the kitchen bustles with a choir of helpers, each one vying for the kitchen's limited accolades of praise, their hands deftly plunging into gooey mixtures
that would make today's food bloggers shudder in horror. It's
A vivid scene. A cacophony of clattering pots, the sizzle of meat being tantalizingly jolted from a fiery abyss, and the occasional shout of, "Careful! The soup's plotting to escape again!" The job is more nerve-wracking than a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Yet the boy knows he must keep rotating the spit, ruminating on the very real possibility of cursing himself into a fate worse than being caught practicing a sword dance. He may as well be flipping pancakes in the middle of a medieval jousting match. The stakes are just that high. But let's take a minute to pause and appreciate the absurdity of this whole situation. Imagine being thrust into a medieval kitchen, only to realize that you're now the sole protector of a roast beast revered above all others. Throw in the terrifying imminent doom of the Kitchener, with his booming voice and worse-than-your-breakfast hot take on culinary disputes. Honestly, it's the equivalent of being responsible for the Wi-Fi connection during a family Zoom call. And you know you have to keep it going, no matter what. As the meat twirls, perhaps unevenly, but so does life, the boy begins to entertain the thought of replacing his spatula with a laser pointer. Who wouldn't want to spice up cooking like it's an episode of Nailed It? The fire crackles in response, almost laughing at his daydreaming, its flames flickering mischievously. Suddenly, the Kitchener appears in his full-blown, angry glory, like a storm cloud with a taste for feasting. The boy straightens up instinctively, shifting into a defensive stance. The kitchen falls eerily silent, as if every pot and candle holder is holding its breath in anticipation of impending doom. That roast looks more uneven than a man's haircut from Cassandra, the Barber of Doom. A wave of shame washes over him. He has committed the gravest of sins in the culinary hierarchy. As the Kitchener rants about the art of even cooking and the importance of not serving slop at the Lord's dinner table, you can't help but chuckle quietly to yourself. It's a hilariously grandiose declaration about something so simple, yet it's taken so seriously here in medieval reality. As you settle into the tranquility of your cozy evening, remember that the next time you worry about your cooking skills, or if your Wi-Fi goes down during a Netflix binge, just think about our young hero with the blistered hands. Because when it comes to life, if you're not busy spinning the spit, you might end up in a soup too hot for even the bravest of souls to handle. And you honestly can't make this stuff up.
Chapter 20. The Tally of Tedium. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're jumping into the largest game of Tetris you've ever seen. Only the pieces are barrels, and they're filled with barley, beans, and perhaps a few rogue rats. You know, for flavor. We're about to explore the fascinating world of the Kitchener and his storeroom, a veritable treasure trove of edible necessities. But don't get too excited, because food preservation has never looked so grim. Now picture this. You're standing in a dimly lit storeroom in 1300 AD, surrounded by the unmistakable scent of, well, could be barley, could be last week's mystery stew. It's a culinary game of Russian roulette, and you've just volunteered to spin the barrel. Decide wisely, my friends. Does that barrel look like it's been to the Great Grain Festival? Or does it just have vintage mold written all over it? Imagine also having to explain the concept of a food budget to a fellow Kitchener. Sorry, my lord, but alas, we've run out of salt, and instead only have an abundant supply of dusty dreams. Would you like me to sprinkle some hope on your porridge instead? As you shake your head, chuckle softly at the absurdity, and get cozy under those thick blankets, let's dive into what management looks like when you're tasked with the most riveting job of the medieval kitchen: tracking rations with your trusty tally stick. Yes, the tally stick, which sounds like some form of medieval sports equipment, but in reality is just a wooden rod where marks are scratched to denote the quantity of food you've got left. It's about as thrilling as second-hand wool. You see our serious Kitchener, a man whose brow is more furrowed than a farmer's field after an unexpected drought, standing vigil over the dwindling supply of food. With his tally stick in hand, he resembles an ancient accountant desperately trying to balance the books
while simultaneously preventing impending famine. It's like watching someone try to maintain a box of kittens, but instead of adorable fluff balls, it's a pile of barley and beans that seem to be plotting a revolt. In the chilly air, the smell of storage fills your nose, an aromatic medley of earthiness with a hint of, why does this even still exist? It's a mixture that would make even a seasoned forager think twice before reaching for a snack. You might call it aged rustic charm. The Kitchener, however, wouldn't use such marketing jargon. He's too busy focusing on whether the Lord can make do with a slightly short supply of lentils this week without going into a culinary crisis. Let's take a moment to consider the task at hand. Imagine not only deciding what the Lord eats, which could honestly help shape or shake the kingdom's reputation, but also having to deal with the strife of calculating how much food you have left, like you're preparing for some apocalyptic winter where everything turns to ice.
And all you have left is a lone carrot sticking out of the ground. Would you prefer that carrot? Or would the Lord like a side of meatloaf made from yesterday's leftover intentions? The Kitchener paces back and forth among the rows of barrels, muttering calculations under his breath like a mad wizard. If I take 2 barrels of barley and add 1 cask of dried beans, what do we have? Dismal prospects for dinner. In this world of high-stakes pantry management, efficiency is the name of the game. After all, you wouldn't want to set off a kitchen revolt over stewed cabbage, not when the stakes are higher than your average peasant's expectations. And if you think family dinners are chaotic, just imagine one in a medieval household. With the nobles dining in their lavish chambers, feasting on delicacies, the kitchen crew faces the even bigger task of managing the leftovers. Leftovers. That's where culinary creativity enters. There's nothing quite like transforming yesterday's soggy porridge into this week's gourmet artistic masterpiece. Just don't ask anyone what it really is. Pretend it's a napkin origami competition gone terribly wrong. Suddenly, you hear an ominous creaking sound from the floor above, where the noble family is no doubt enjoying a feast fit for royalty. What was that, you wonder? The Kitchener doesn't flinch. He has seen far too many days of dinner disasters. Probably just last week's cabbage plotting its escape, he mutters. And you roll your eyes, thinking you've never wanted to be a cabbage less in your entire life. Meanwhile, the storage room becomes an inadvertent hideout for a sneaky rat, who bravely emerges, scouting for a snack like the valiant knight of nibbling. The Kitchener notices. Seems we're not the only ones who can't resist a good meal, he declares, swatting at the creature with the kind of energy usually reserved for a fire-breathing dragon. The rat darts away, perhaps considering a career in herbalism instead. It heard the kitchen wasn't a safe place for its long-term health. As the Kitchener scribbles on his tally stick, resigned to the varying fates of the food supplies, he can't help but reflect on the absurdity of his daily grind. If only his lord could comprehend the vastly complicated arithmetic of food preservation, a skill more difficult than convincing a cat to take a bath. And just like that, you sit back, noticing that organizing a pantry was never merely about stockpiling food. It was a dance with destiny, a balancing act of delectable proportions, but mostly a lot of beans. You realize that every grain has a story, every barrel a history, and that somehow this ordinary, tedious existence is what it took to bring noble to the dinner table. It's a strange and delightful unraveling of life's intricacies, revealing that perhaps managing a medieval kitchen isn't too different from trying to juggle our own chaotic schedules. Today. So the next time your refrigerator starts looking like it's been raided by a band of warlords, remember our Kitchener friend, surrounded by dwindling food supplies and rodents plotting against him, yet somehow still finding humor in the simple but vital task of keeping hunger at bay. Because, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make...
Chapter 21. The Crusty Culinary Conspiracy. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're about to embark on a culinary adventure that's only slightly less chaotic than trying to get your kids to clean their rooms after an afternoon snack explosion.
We'll dive into the raucous world of medieval leftovers, where the only thing standing between hungry servants and culinary disaster is a thin layer of crust, a lot of hope, and one very distracted cook. So go ahead, dim those lights a bit, grab that cozy blanket you swear you'll actually wash someday, and settle into a comfy position. But before you drift off into your dreams of gravy-laden feasts, let's ask ourselves, what was life really like for those poor servants who had to scrounge for scraps after the noble family had their fill? Did they really think hoping for today's moldy bread to turn into tomorrow's fine dining was a viable strategy? And let's be real, have you ever tasted bread so stale it could double as a doorstop? Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1300 AD, in a kitchen bustling with activity, and you've already missed breakfast. The aroma of last night's meat pie lingers in the air, only to be accompanied by the smell of something distinctly questionable. Perhaps you notice the sound of a copper pan getting scraped, like a desperate musician searching for a final note in a terribly out-of-tune ballad. Welcome to the underbelly of noble dining. Imagine yourself amidst a small group of weary servants, faces smeared with flour and evidence of last night's frying calamity. You're clutching a rather unimpressive wooden spoon, half-heartedly attempting to scavenge what little remains consists mostly of soggy crusts and the faint memory of meat. Some might call it leftovers. You, on the other hand, term it culinary optimism. The noble family might have feasted like kings, but here, in the servants' quarters, it's more like the royal rummage sale. So, there you are, silently praying that the cook is too busy polishing a well-seasoned frying pan to notice that one adventurous girl in the corner. She's eyeing a small crust of bread, the last vestige of the meat pie from a meal that probably got more attention than her entire existence. Why, you might wonder, does she need the crust? Surely, it couldn't be as delicious as a fresh pastry from the nearby marketplace, except, oops, it's not like she has a choice. The marketplace is more of a distant fantasy than a feasible midday excursion, since she can't exactly clock out for a donut run while buried under piles of vegetable peelings. As she swipes that crust with the grace of a pickpocket, you can't help but think how relatable her stealthy escapade is. We all have those moments at home, right? Sneaking snacks from your spouse's hidden stash, or raiding the last of the secret chocolate bar you thought you had hidden away. If only the cook could pretend not to notice. Perhaps she could leave the room for a second, allowing for that glorious moment of glorious bread bliss. Alas, hope tends to dwindle like melted butter on warm bread, a fleeting happiness. Suddenly, a loud clang echoes through the kitchen. It's the cook, booming like an ominous thundercloud, declaring, "If anyone lays a hand on the pie, you'll be on potato peeling duty until your fingers shrink." The girl freezes, half-chewed crust almost falling from her mouth as she contemplates her life choices. Is that really a threat? She thinks. I'd rather face an angry boar at the market than peel potatoes endlessly. You start to imagine how cook-like figures might react to modern kitchen disasters. Oh, you burnt the dinner? That's it. You're barred from using the microwave for the next century. It gets a bit absurd, doesn't it? But the kitchen hierarchy runs incredibly deep, much like the layers of flavor in a stew that's been simmering for days. Meanwhile, the rest of the kitchen staff fumbles about like a troupe of acrobats who've dramatically overstated their abilities. Nobody agrees on who spilled the last jug of rancid oil, a true medieval whodunit. The clinking of pots and pans resonates eerily, creating an auditory backdrop that feels like an old bard's tale gone awry. Through the chaos, the girl stares longingly at the copper pan, now a battlefield, glistening in the flickering candlelight. There, in the depth of its golden surface, lies the last morsel that could salvage her dignity. But the shadows of her fellow workers loom large. It's a classic tug-of-war between the desire for sustenance
and the risk of sneezing on the cook's prized storage of dust bunnies and dry beans, a consequence that could spawn lifelong enmity. As you soak in this chaotic kitchen life, you realize, amidst the laughter and the tension, there's something undeniably human about cherishing those last remnants of a feast. This is not just about eating, it's a fleeting moment, an art form passed down through history. With a single crust of bread, a simple servant's heart defies the odds of hierarchy and culinary chaos. And that, my friends, is something you can truly savor. Now, as we find ourselves amidst this flurry of a daily kitchen survival show, minus the snazzy production values, you can almost picture the welcoming embrace of a blanket pulled snugly around your shoulders, as well as the warmth of that elusive comfort food. Because, in the end, it may be nothing more than crusts and dribbles, but this kitchen experience truly is what slapped a hearty stamp of nobility on medieval life. So, let's take a moment to appreciate the irony of our beloved leftovers. Maybe your refrigerator doesn't come with a crescent moon's worth of dust, or an active rat population contemplating job offers, but it does invite those nostalgic moments each time you reach for a palatable relic. Even if
You're just hoping against hope that today's culinary gamble pays off.
Chapter 22. Beneath the Elder Tree.
Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're stepping into a world so thrillingly grim that even your most exhausting Monday might seem like a summer picnic. Get ready to dive headfirst into the humble and often misunderstood life of the medieval worker, those anonymous heroes who toiled away only to disappear faster than yesterday's leftovers at a family reunion feast. So, grab that cozy blanket you've been threatening to wash since last year, dim those lights, and prepare to settle into the delightful disarray of life in 1300 AD. Ever wondered what it felt like to dig in the dirt with your bare hands, all while dodging the whispered prayers of the various insects, hoping you don't disturb their afternoon? Can you fathom the sheer joy of burials where weather wasn't just an inconvenience, but a character? I mean, what if your Auntie Geraldine's cousin Ed buried you in the wrong patch of muddy earth out by the elder tree? Could you cling to life long enough to haunt them for eternity? Congratulations! You've just woken up in 1300 AD in the shadow of a massive elder tree, where we find ourselves at a simple burial scene, tenderly poignant yet slightly absurd. Imagine it, a gathering of familiar faces, all wearing expressions that suggest a mix of grief and, how did we end up here? As the sun begins to set, the sky blushes with colors that could outshine any nobleman's fancy tunic, while a gentle breeze carries a bittersweet harmony between nature and our inevitable fate. Here you are, standing at the grave of someone who's shuffled off their mortal coil after years of feeling the weight of the world, or at least the weight of a particularly large potato. You begin to ponder the significance of this odd, sacred ritual, where hands, rough and calloused from years of labor, lower the body into the earth with the finesse of a toddler at their first birthday party, runaway cake included. Oh, but wait. What's that sound? Is it the distant droning of an oblivious cow? Or perhaps the neighbor's toddler who has decided that now is the perfect time to demonstrate their interpretative dance for the moment? Either way, the solemnity of this affair is matched only by a cacophony of life's absurdities. It's as if the universe itself has decided that, even in death, laughter will not be left behind. A crooked wooden cross is hurriedly fashioned, standing as a monument to this whole mess, marking the grave like a particularly ambitious toothpick telling the world, "I hold all the secrets of last year's harvest." What heartfelt stories will be whispered around this peculiar patch of earth? Perhaps tales of how our dearly departed can no longer be blamed for the missing turnip, or the curious case of the mysteriously vanished cheese. As the murmuring crowd gathers, they circle closer, like crows around an unexpected corn feast. Here, amidst the solemnity, we witness something rather curious.
the way they share stories. But it's not just any stories. It's the good old-fashioned gossip that spins into folklore. "Oh, do you remember the time he tried to tame that wild goat?" Someone chuckles, which leads to another about how he lost a foot race with an old lady pushing a cart of cabbages. Cabbages, mind you. But honestly, aren't they all a little bit of a foot race themselves? You can't help but notice how these gatherings feel like the medieval equivalent of scrolling through your social media feed, where everyone seems to be a star in their own bizarre sitcom, desperate to maintain the illusion of normalcy while juggling their everyday calamities. Truth be told, if someone were to film this event, it could be a hit series. Grave Diggers Gone Wild, The Afterlife Chronicles. Who wouldn't binge watch that? You begin to wonder if somewhere, in the distant future, people will take their loved ones to the supermarket to symbolize their final resting place. Or perhaps it'll all just come down to which grave has the best view over the hills. I don't care if you're 6 feet under, what really matters is the view, you think with a smirk, which may or may not be dark humor coming from a brain swimming in absurdity. After they lower the body into the ground, the camaraderie shifts to what can only be described as a medieval post-funeral picnic. Just behind the crowd, someone pulls out a loaf of bread, as if to say, "Well, since we're all here, who's ready for cheese and regrettable decisions?" Give it a few hours, and you might just catch a hunt for a few wayward cactus fruits if the crowd gets too daring. Yet, amidst the laughter and shared memories, you feel the weight of the world pressing down, a reminder that life, in all its absurdity, keeps rolling forward. After all, these hard-bitten souls encapsulate an essence of existence that echoes through time. They embroider their stories with laughter and resilience, finding joy even in the heart of sorrow. So as you drift off to sleep amidst the chatter of the afterlife, perhaps ask yourself, when you shuffle off this mortal coil, will your loved ones parade around sharing tales of your epic potato fiascos? Or are you more of a left the cat in the microwave sort of legend? Either way, rest easy. The stories don't end here. They've only just begun. Chapter 23, The Legacy of Weathered Hands. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we're peeling back the layers of history to discover the fascinatingly unglamorous role of the medieval worker, the unsung champions of yesteryear who made life in 1300 AD possible, even if they were more likely to get a splinter than a pay raise. Get ready to dive into a world where achievements were often measured by the number of potatoes you could carry on your back while dodging the neighbor's goose with a vendetta. Now, imagine what it was like to wake up in a time when work from home meant just step outside and avoid that oddly aggressive rooster. You might question, what did their breakfast look like? Did they use lemon zest? Was coffee worth the treacherous trip to the market? Spoiler alert, no. So grab that favorite blanket, the one with questionable stains that could tell stories of their own. Dim those lights, and let's meander into a world where labor was as noble as it was absurd. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1300 AD, somewhere in the pastoral countryside, where the phrase, "getting your hands dirty," wasn't just a euphemism, it was a necessity. Now, as you wander through the ramshackle landscape, your attention is drawn to the old, weathered hands that once helped mend a rough-hewn wooden fence lingering nearby. These hands, if they could talk, would share tales of childhood scrapes, the daily dramas of livestock, and the trials of dodging an angry hen. Take a moment to picture this old man, with hands more wrinkled than a month-old apple, resting gently on that fence, contemplating the legacy he'll leave behind. Now let's pause and appreciate what it took for this noble man. Not the kind wearing a shiny suit of armor, mind you, but rather a man in tattered clothing, with the earthy aroma of sweat, prayer, and perhaps the remnants of yesterday's gruel. This is what laid the groundwork for the medieval lifestyle. He wasn't just fixing fences, he was crafting dreams, or at least preventing them from wandering too far into the neighbor's garden. You see, every knot tied in that fence carried whispers of dedication, or possibly just the wish to keep sheep from staging regular escape attempts. Let's consider the daily grind of our medieval friend,
who would rise before the sun, a time when roosters were more reliable than any alarm clock. "Rise and shine," they'd chortle while simultaneously doubting the wisdom of the last pint of ale. Days were filled with toil, thatching roofs, digging ditches, or performing laborious tasks that made modern-day gym memberships look like a light cardio session at the local park. Ever worn a straw hat while climbing a roof? Spoiler alert, it's like being a human scarecrow, minus the charming rural attire. And what sweetness lay in the simple act of prayer as he straddled the line between religion and practicality. Often, you could spot his hands fumbling through the soil as he muttered wishes for a bountiful harvest, which had about the same odds of coming true as winning the festival's pie-eating contest while being chased by a particularly peckish goat. Oh, but the joys didn't end there. After hours of back-breaking work, one would indulge in a lofty dinner, potentially consisting of last week's turnip stew that was still trying to escape its ancient clay pot. It's like modern cuisine's hipster fixation, taking leftovers and calling them artisan, while simultaneously praying they wouldn't grow legs and run away. As dusk would settle like an uninvited guest at a family reunion, it provided our friendly laborer an opportunity to reflect on his day. Greeting the moon like an old friend who needed more soap, he would inspect his handiwork, pride swelling as he admired a fence that, coincidentally, was mostly still upright. Every creak from that fence echoed with the silent companionship of all the labor he had poured into it, much like listening to your knees crack as you stand up after binging a few too many medieval ales. Yet, despite the bruises, missing a few fingers and endless tales of woe muttered under his breath, there existed a quiet dignity in this simplicity. It wasn't about securing riches or noble titles. It was about the knowledge that the world functioned through countless unseen hands. Hands that prayed, patched thatch, and lent strength to the daily grind. Together, they spun the threads of history that would weave through generations, even if their names were as forgettable as last year's corn harvest. So, you might find yourself waking at odd hours of the night, questioning whether your ventilator is working properly, or if you've mysteriously ended up in a hayloft. Leave it to those weathered hands, calloused with experience, to remind you that while life may come with its own set of absurdities and discomforts, a bit of prayer and a steadfast heart can forge even the simplest fences into legacies more grand than some grandiose castle's courtyards. Tomorrow, you might just find yourself unconsciously creating your own legacy, perhaps mending a fence or inspiring laughter in the most unexpected of situations. The tales you carry, just like those weathered hands, have the potential to ripple through time, far beyond your humble potato field. And who knows, in the grand tapestry of history, perhaps someone will write a whimsical sleep story about it one day, or, at the very least, share it over an extraordinarily unenthusiastic bowl of turnip stew.
Chapter 24. Of Windows, Drafts, and Uninvited Spirits.
Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're setting sail on a rather chilly voyage, where peasants left their doors ajar not for a friendly neighbor, but to usher in wandering spirits seeking a sweet escape from the world. Yes, friends, it's time to explore the traditions and quirks of a medieval countryside. Spoiler, it's colder than your ex's heart after you turn down their recommended movies. So, before we dive into the fascinating cold abyss, I urge you to like, subscribe, and comment, but only if you actually enjoy this, because we only want to hear nice things from adventurers like you. Now, dim those lights, put on a fan, not that we need to recreate a windstorm here, but, why not, and find your favorite blanket, preferably one that had a less than ideal life as a sheep's scarf. Have you ever wondered what traditional medieval sleepovers looked like? Did they have awkward pillow fights, or was that just a luxury reserved for nobles? Spoiler alert, they didn't even have pillows. Ever tried to nap with a sack of straw as your headrest? Or desperately wished you could access a local spa after a day of plowing fields while dodging the odd goose? What precisely did they do when faced with an excruciating frostbite? And when was the last time you were genuinely terrified by a draft? Congratulations, you've just woken up in a quaint little cottage in the year 1300. It's charming, if charming means frigid with a hint of despair, and your only company is a rather disgruntled goat trying to get cozy next to you. As the sun sets and the chill creeps in, you can practically taste the draft swirling around your face like a restless ghost with a penchant for prankish drafts. Now, as you awaken, let's contemplate the cozy little window standing valiantly against the evening's chill, surrounding you with sounds that include a cacophony of creaking wood, rustling straw, and perhaps the mild annoyance of a neighbor's cat thinking it owns the entire village. Ah yes, that cold night breeze filtering through the leaded glass, if you can call it glass, more like an ambitious attempt at modernity that feels as welcoming as a surprise ice bath. The elderly woman sitting by the hearth, bless her heart, has just opened that leaded window, letting the cold march in like an unwanted guest who forgot to knock. It's village tradition, you see, to allow a passing soul to be carried skyward, whisking it away to a realm free from frost-bitten toes and mediocre turnip stew. It's a comforting thought, really, especially when you realize you've only got a few rags between you and the chill of the night creeping in through all the tiny cracks. A little air circulation is a noble gesture, after all. Nothing says, "Welcome home," like a gust of icy wind that literally makes you question your life choices. The woman sighs softly as she gazes out into the twilight, wondering if her window's draft will whisk away the memory of last week's questionable cabbage. Sure, I'll just let in the cold air, she thinks, and it may even clear out the scent of despair from me old stew pot. Little does she know, her penchant for window ventilation has opened the floodgates for whimsical spirits and icy reminders of her unfortunate cooking choices. Outside, dark figures dart about, perhaps a wayward chicken, or it could just be Tom, the village jester, who may or may not be in a drunken altercation with a shrub. Either way, the village is alive with sounds, mostly of grunts and low bellows of creatures that potentially ran away from last year's market. Ah, modern entertainment at its best. Better than cable television, that's for sure. But let's not forget our dear cottage. Inside, the ambience is about as cozy as a spike in energy bills. The beautifully adorned linens, if they can really be called beautiful, tag along with an aroma that suggests aged cabbage is the official scent. And you ponder, how did it come to this? Was there a moment where someone said, "Yes, this cabbage has aged like fine wine," but without the fine or the wine? As the evening unfurls, an almost theatrical silence encompasses the surroundings, contrasting sharply with the previous cacophony of life outside. It envelops you like the tattered remnants of your childhood blanket, an invitation, albeit one laced with frigid uncertainty, for a fascinating journey into the absurd tapestry of medieval existence. Conversing with the spirit of the night, you chuckle inwardly at the absurdities that every medieval peasant endured. Bathing was practically a seasonal event, where finding a warm bucket of water was the medieval equivalent of winning the lottery. And yet, like clockwork, the village's response to winter was stunningly reactionary, while sitting in drafty homes with that brooding sense of dread that someday you too could end up as part of a spiritual procession towards brighter, warmer pastures. A thought crosses your mind as you drift into slumber beneath the blanket of memories and a medley of rustic absurdities. This is life as it was known, a testament to those who risked frostbite over fancy long johns, preferring the companionship of a wildly gusting window instead of cozy fleece. What a way to live! And with that, you smile, knowing that the tales of yesterday, from leaded windows to adventure-seeking chickens, continue to echo through time, as earnest as ever. So, embrace the chill, warm your heart with laughter, and perhaps dream of one day achieving the hockey team-sized ambition of letting it all go, along with the smell of last week's cabbage.
Chapter 25. Embracing the chill and the cozy life of medieval villages.
Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we sail into a peaceful yet slightly absurd world where life unfolds in a quaint medieval village as dusk descends.
Picture it. The sun melts away into a dreary horizon, the remnants of daylight surrendering to the mighty dark. A bit like your will to stay awake after a long day of pretending to enjoy broccoli. This is the backdrop for our journey. A land where villagers valiantly confront the encroaching cold while reminiscing about that lovely day they managed to convince their goat to not nibble at their tunic. I encourage you to like, subscribe, and comment, only if you genuinely enjoy this delightful romp through history, as we prefer kind words from fellow adventurers over sarcastic quips from lurking trolls. Now, dim those lights, throw on a lovely old blanket, one that has seen better days and maybe even a mystery stain or two, and get cozy. You'll want to be ready for this suspenseful descent into the life of medieval folk. Have you ever wondered how they celebrated Friday nights? Was it as grand as a modern-day Netflix binge? Or were they just huddled around a smoldering fire, flipping through old recipes for something called ton of turnip stew? Did animal companions hold the best gossip? Or did everyone know far too much about each other's bathing habits too? Also, who was the guy that first learned to start a fire with 2 wet sticks? Was he celebrated or just left to shiver like a forgotten beetroot? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1300, a remarkably quaint time, unless you count the high probability of ice-cold feet and a menu to make anyone question their life choices. As dusk settles around you, the village brims with a calm that seems serene, until one realizes the background music consists of creaking wood, rustling straw, and the occasional raucous clucking of a chicken with dreams of escape. Spoiler, they don't usually succeed. Let's take a moment to appreciate the delightful scene in your cozy little abode. The solid walls tell tales of their own, a gorgeous tapestry of cracks and crevices patching the not-so-clever arrangement of wattle and daub. Yes, that charming mixture of mud and straw is as romantic as it sounds, if you're into rustic, earthy aesthetics with a seasoning of animal dung, of course. Nothing screams cozy cottage quite like a home that's one gust of wind away from being a scene in a disaster movie. The sun has dipped, leaving the sky inky, and the air outside just chilly enough to make you reconsider that life choice of leaving the door ajar for a wayward spirit, who, let's be honest, might just be a lost cat. A slight chill sneaks in through the gaps between your wall and what you've affectionately named your window, though most of it is simply a cleverly placed hole covered by draped animal hides. Ah, the artistry. Who needs actual glass when you can invite in the frost with open arms? You shift your gaze to the hearth, where a humble fire flickers and crackles, your only source of warmth in an environment that seems determined to be as cold and unwelcoming as your 4th-grade gym teacher. The smell of banked coals and the remnants of whatever stew last graced your pot linger in the air, like a gentle reminder that culinary delights were not the forte of your household. Ah yes, it's turnip surprise again. Surprise, I've turned into a vegetable. As you sit closely to the fire, your neighbors' lively conversations waft through the gaps. Laughs are heard, but primarily they sound like the barks and clucks of assorted livestock, sharing wisdom on hay and seasonal grains. Ever wonder what your local gossip was like back then? Why, Mrs. Haggerty's turnips are positively unnatural, and that goat, don't get me started. It was basically a soap opera, just in slow motion and set against a backdrop of mud and poorly constructed architecture. Now, let's delve deeper into this lovely slice of life. Your evening ritual consists of a communal gathering with newfound friends, most of whom are your goats, as you cuddle for warmth, lamenting over last week's auction, where the best garlic was snatched away by a rival who had a dubious reputation for, oh, the horror, removing the hides before slumber. If the goats are particularly cranky this night, you may find yourself negotiating trading scraps of food with them. How about a turnip for a cuddle? But alas, they probably borrowed that trick from your neighbor, who might have found a way to turn a goat into furniture. The peace of the village evening wraps around you, almost lulling you into a state of blissful ignorance. Humbled by simplicity, you chuckle at the absurdity of their situation. The struggles of the day are heavy, but not nearly as heavy as the prospect of sleeping atop a bed of itchy straw while dodging the occasional disenchanted beetle. So, as the stars twinkle above and cast a faint light on your humble dwelling, you take a deep breath and embrace the chill. Each creak of the house offers up whispers of stories endured, lost to time. You might find solace in the thought of tomorrow's challenges, like cooking another turnip, a mystery that awaits your culinary prowess. Ah, yes, life in the medieval village is a vibrant tapestry of absurdity, laughter, and abominably cold feet, bound together by the invisible threads of resilience and hope. Because at the end of the day, when all else feels a little too heavy, you can always find a way to laugh it off, or cuddle a goat. As we ease our way out of the medieval world tonight, take a moment to reflect on the strange, exhausting, and unexpectedly hilarious journey we've just drifted through. From sleepy servants rising before dawn to coax stubborn embers back to life, to young peasants wrestling with scratchy wool, smoky kitchens, and questionable stews, we've seen just how much invisible labor kept that world turning. Their days were long, their comforts few, and their victories, however small, were hard-earned. Yet somehow, they still managed to laugh, endure, and survive another sunrise in a world that demanded everything from them. Tonight, we honor them, the cooks who battled fire like knights in an absurd culinary war, the scullions who slipped through cold stone corridors, the girls who danced across great halls, strewing herbs to mask a week's worth of odors, and the countless others whose names never made the manuscripts, but whose hands shaped every noble feast, prayer, and quiet domestic moment. Their resilience wasn't glamorous, but it was powerful. It was the heartbeat beneath all the velvet, ceremony, and splendor. And as you lie here now, clean, warm, comfortable, with soft bedding and no threat of turnip stew, you can let a gentle gratitude settle over you. For heat that appears with a switch, for light that doesn't rely on a struggle with tallow and smoke, for food that isn't one burnt cough away from disaster, for a world where rest is possible and even expected. So breathe deeply. Let the weight of the day fall away. Allow the quiet strength of those long-gone workers to guide you into peace. Let your mind soften, your body loosen, and your thoughts drift like lantern smoke. You've made it through your own long day. Now, rest. Good night.